Okay. Where's Patrick? If you can hear us virtually, please put your thumbs up.
I didn't my string on.
Good evening. I repeat, good evening. Thanks for coming to the June 6th, 2024 meeting of the Full Committee Board 2. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Awesome, thank you. So, packed agenda, a whole bunch of presentations and one vote. So I will enforce time limit strictly today, 2 minutes for everyone, us also. And remember, for the board members, your vote is your opinion. If you feel strongly about something, say it once, don't say it 5 times. You will not get the mic back. Please follow the wait rule. Why am I talking? Listen to each other. Only ask questions for the community. Otherwise, follow up offline with whoever is here. And if you're not a board member, questions of representatives here will be for board members only. Just a general reminder, no electioneering during this meeting. Thank you. And otherwise, let us get started with comments from elected officials. Are there any elected officials here? No. Okay, so we'll get started with Tiffany Echeverria from Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez. Oh, you're so far behind. Not behind. You're so far away. After Tiffany, it's Mercedes, and then Victoria.
Sorry, it was a little more of a walk today. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon or good evening. My name is Tiffany, representing Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez. Happy June. Just want to talk about quickly 2 pieces of legislation that the Congresswoman introduced into the House. One of them is called H.R. 8443, which amends the Small Business Act to provide re-entry entrepreneurship counseling and training services for incarcerated individuals. Another piece of legislation she introduced is called H.R. 8601. This legislation amends the Public Health Service Act to provide liver illness, visibility, education, and research for other purposes. Some 2 quick actions that the Congresswoman has done so far. On June 1st, the Congresswoman hosted a higher education webinar. It was online, basically talking about FAFSA, how to fill out the FAFSA, who qualifies for FAFSA. Also, SUNY and CUNY were invited as well, just to talk about a little bit more what they do. We do have the recording, and we are having some technical difficulties trying to get that out to everyone, but please be on the lookout for that. I will email it to the board for sure, so it's good that you guys can watch it on your own time. Lastly, please join us on June 20th at 11 a.m. for a check presentation for Sunnyside Shines bid. The Congresswoman will present the Sunnyside Shines bid with a community project funding check of $2,116. These funds will be used for things such as new street furniture. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. New street furniture, such as new garbage cans, new areas to put your bikes, more trees. The presentation will take place on the Sunnyside Archway on, I believe, 46th Avenue. So also look out for that invitation as well. It's also on a little flyer that I have in the back table over there. And that's all I have for you guys this month. Any questions, comments?
I have
Okay. Sure.
Have all of the community projects been confirmed?
Sorry, who am I? Oh, on Zoom. Hi. All of the community projects are still going into effect. We're still looking over who qualifies and who we're actually going to allocate the money to. For this Sunnyside Shines, this was the community project funding from last year. So right now, all the check presentations that we're doing this year is from last year's funding. But this year's funding, we're still in the process of choosing and seeing who's going to get the funds.
Have you received guidance from the Appropriations Committee?
Yes, we received guidance from the Appropriations Committee. We received that, well, nonprofits could not qualify for the funding, but NYCHA can, as well as city agencies. So I know one project that I spoke about last meeting was in regards to new bike lanes along Vernon Boulevard. I don't want to give you the wrong information, but I could definitely provide you with the right information. But we have some funding for DOT as well as DEP from the top of my head right now. But I could provide more information in the next meeting for sure.
Thank you.
Of course. Any more questions? Okay, thank you.
Mercedes Jennings from Senator Gennaro's office.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you again for having me today on behalf of State Senator Michael Gennaros. My name is Mercedes Jennings. Just to give you a quick update of a few events that the senator attended. Last weekend, last Friday, he not only he helped PS 84 celebrate their amazing carnival for 120 years existing as a school. He also supported small businesses at the PS 85 Expo on the 25th of May. And he also attended an event in Little Thailand to support a lot of the small businesses over there. This week, as you know, he is trying to make sure things wrap up for session. He has tried very hard to support a lot of the legislations that did pass in the Senate last year that I know we've been trying to see if the Assembly could pass. I still do not know. A lot of them are still in committee, but in 24 hours, maybe in 48, that might change. But as I know, many of them are still in committee. So I know I'll probably get a lot of questions about that. So I just wanted to give everyone a heads up. And he is trying his best to advocate with the Assembly, even though he's not there. As a representative in the Assembly, but he's working really hard to try to see if those things could pass. Like one of the things I know that has been mentioned a couple of times, the Privacy Act, he is working diligently to try to see if that could pass in the Assembly. Because once it does, then it could go to Hochul and be signed and be a law. Are there any questions for me? Hi. No, it's okay. Okay, so who first? Okay.
Hi, thanks. Good to see you. Nice to be here.
Yes.
So I won't give you my list, but you know I have one.
It's
But I do just want to thank you and the senator through you for the 21st Century Antitrust Act that got passed.
Yes.
And for those who don't know, that act, part of what it will do is stop collusion of rent price fixing, which would help us like lower what market rate rent is. And my question is, and I know you don't have the answer, is there going to be any movement on this in the assembly? Because it is on the second in charge
Yeah,
bill in the assembly.
same thing. It's still stuck in committee.
So that can be added to my long list that I have.
Please. Yes, definitely. I would again suggest, because for example, today I was in the office, we actually got a lot of calls from constituents in the community about several legislations. And I was telling them, well, this is where it is. It's in the assembly, it's in the committee, or it's in the Senate in the committee. Please contact the assembly as well, so it can have some kind of movement in both houses. So I strongly again suggest that whether it's email or calls, please definitely do that. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Hi, thanks. Do you have any updates on what the senator is doing to urge the governor to reverse her decision on congestion pricing?
He definitely did push out a statement, and he said he's definitely against it, and he does want her to change her mind, and he is advocating strongly in Albany.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And please keep fighting.
And there's other senators that are in support with him, so we're hoping that he can convince her to change her mind.
Thank you.
You're
Roz.
welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Roz.
Hi, Mercedes. I would like some updates. Do we have any updates on Idaho Stop, which is to allow bicyclists to treat red light cameras as stop signs and yield signs, so on. And also even more significant, the red light, the red light camera, we need to make sure that they are not only reinstituted, but expanded. And has anything happened on that, or?
I wish I could tell you that movement has happened. Unfortunately, it has not. But as you know, the senator has been in support of both.
I know.
And he's been, again, really advocating strongly to see if it can move through the assembly and also through the Senate. Unfortunately, because he's also not on that committee, like he can only provide and discuss with those senators that are in charge of those committee and push it through. But he can only do that for right now. But he continues to be supportive of it.
So very important for our community.
And he grieves, especially because you remember, already we've lost so many people as a result of that going on. So he definitely is in huge support of it and will continue to advocate for it. You're welcome. Anything else? Hi. Sure.
Morning. Advocate. I know I've been a huge advocate for the New York Privacy Act for a couple of years now.
Yes.
I just want to course correct. The bill has been watered down in the Senate. It now is opt in by default rather than opt out by default. I want to retract my support for that bill, and I want to support the Assembly's version of the bill and look at other bills. So if you could take that back to the office, that the New York Privacy Act, as it's been watered down and with the forced opt-in, no good for the people.
But I also think right now, like definitely what you're saying, the Assembly, because the reason why it's still in committee is because the Assembly is trying to put amendments that were in the previous act in the Senate before, as you said, got watered down. So I think that's why the traction there is still happening. So hopefully in the Assembly, it'll get passed the way that you're hoping it gets passed.
Thank you. Yeah, and I don't think anything's going to happen this year, but maybe we can gear up for next year. But yeah, definitely. And I know there's other organizations like the Stop Surveillance Organization has pulled support for it as well. So that's
Exactly. Yep.
the Senate bill. Thank you.
No worries, of course.
All right.
Anything else? Thank you so much tonight. Have a good day.
Next is Victoria from Assemblyman Stephen Raga's office, and then Evelyn.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Victoria Leahy. I'm the Chief of Staff for Assemblymember Stephen Raga. We're in the last few hours of legislative session, but we've recently introduced two pieces of legislation, A10191, which would prevent housing discrimination on the base of wage history, your medical history, or health conditions to close loopholes in the current fair housing laws of New York State. We've also introduced A10496, which would require the Accessoride program to adopt an online program for applications. Right now, individuals can only apply via a mail-in application, and you only get updates via mail. There's no online system to check your application status or to request a ride, and we think it's time to update the system and make it more accessible for New York residents. For upcoming events, we do have our second annual Pride Month celebration, which will be on June 29th from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. at Elmhurst Hospital. We will be announcing honorees and partners shortly, but want everybody to save the date. Earlier this week, we hosted NHS of Queens at our district office to help constituents apply for the Section 8 housing waitlist. If you or a neighbor or a friend still would like to apply to get on the wait list, the deadline is coming up very, very soon. So we urge you to call our district office for assistance. And then finally, we are officially out of rain barrels for our June 15th giveaway, and our wait list is now closed as we have over 100 residents on our wait list. We will keep the public posted on future rain barrel giveaways and when we do plan to reopen our wait list, but we want to get through everybody who's already on that list first. And with that, I'm going to say this is my last CB2. For those of you who don't know, I'm in law school, and so I was not able to work out my schedule for the fall to join you on Thursdays. Dolma Lama, she's sitting back there. She's our Director of Community Affairs. Many of you have worked with her directly on case-related issues. She oversees our constituent services at our district office, and she will be your CB2 liaison starting in September.
We're so sorry to see you go.
No, it's been so wonderful being here. I love CB2. Hopefully I can be back here in time for this spring. So hopefully I won't be away too long.
Thank you. I appreciate you being here, and we're going to miss you. Has the assembly member made a statement about congestion pricing? I don't think I saw anything.
The assembly member is extremely disappointed about Governor Hochul's last minute decision to undo congestion pricing. Obviously, he shares concerns about some of the small businesses and the taxi workers who are really concerned about this, but the last minute ditch at congestion pricing creates a deficit of $1 billion for the MTA, one which affects the bond value, which the MTA had recently adjusted a few months ago with that projection, but also all of the projects that are now going to be on hold. That $1 billion investment was actually going to go renovate the MR Northern Boulevard station and make it ADA compliant. And now that we lose that money, our constituents are losing out on accessibility and MTA functionality. And so this last minute ditch without a plan to either reinstate it or redirect the money is just, he feels is not the best approach to to resolving congestion pricing.
No, thank you. It's an urgent issue. I would love to see a statement come out.
Thank you. Okay, I will
Thank
let
you.
him know. Yeah.
Roz?
Just a clarification, two things. One was, would this affect the elevators that we heard about for the 46th Street station and 33rd Street station? We had an excellent presentation. I think we're going to hear more about it.
I'm not too sure. We were just checking on the items that were in the district. So the MR Northern Boulevard was the only item in the district that was going to be on hold. I am happy to check on the other 7 train investments.
The other thing you said, and I just didn't hear it, was the discrimination based on what were the?
Wage history, medical history, and health conditions.
So wage history.
Yes.
I didn't know whether it was weight or wage.
No, wage history, yes.
So the MTA proposal, thank you. Thank you. MTA proposal and your office and also the Governor Hochul office is, you guys say suddenly, but it's not suddenly. We are overlooking last couple of years this situation. It's not happening that she decided and stopped, not that. There's a lot of people from the different state even are supporting to stop this unnecessary congestion price. That as I am representing the driver community, so I know that the situation, but the problem is the big truck. Manhattan never been affected any surge price. If you charges $100, definitely the car need to go there. But the problem is a narrow and the spaces. Even you see the bicyclist lane, all are closed. So the traffic get there over the last 2-3 years. You cannot never affect this surge price. So my request to your office, you guys can charge to the big truck who is really bothering to the near Manhattan bound, any pedestrian or everything, you can double charges them and do this emergency work.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, thank you for the suggestion. That comment was about Governor Hochul's decision to halt it without consulting either house or decide how she was going to find the funds for investment. Her suggestion was to increase taxes on New York City, which obviously the Assembly member opposes. But we did meet with the Taxi Worker Alliance earlier this week before we knew the plan was going to halt, to talk to them about their concerns. And so, yes, taxi workers is one of the groups that the Assembly members is, you know, he understands their urge for amendments. Yeah. Of course. Thank you. I'll be here for the rest of the night. Please stop by and say hi. And have a good evening.
I have a question. Sorry, I'm on Zoom. Yes.
Hi.
My question was about the discrimination for the housing. When you say wage discrimination, do you mean like people who get like a voucher for their housing, like low income people who get vouchers? It like landlords can't discriminate against those people?
So that's already covered under source of income discrimination. Wage history has to do more with if there are gaps in your employment or how much you've made prior to what you're currently submitting in pay stubs.
Gotcha. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you again, Victoria, for, what was it, 2 years, 3 years? Wow. Thank you so much. Okay, next is Evelyn Lee, and then Natalie from Juanito's office.
Hi, I'm Evelyn Lee from Congressman Grisman's office. Just want to share a few things that we've been doing. And if you remember, back in January, upon the request by the Congresswoman Grisman, United States Postal Service, they started the first federal audit into the mail theft problem in Queens. And recently we got the result, and the audit reviewed the mismanagement in the deployment and installation of mail theft mitigation initiatives throughout Queens. And additionally, it reviewed that some local facilities that failed to track and secure keys to green relay boxes properly track the installation of high security boxes and maintain the condition of collection and the relay boxes. And we are aware that this is still an ongoing issue throughout our district in Queens and throughout the New York City. But hopefully this is going to be a starting point. We have the problem, we have some plans, and the Congressman is committed to continuing to work to prevent mail theft in Queens. And as for events, we do have like some upcoming events in June. First of all, we can have another passport events helping people to apply for the first time or renew their passport in Jackson Heights Post Office. And that's on this coming Sunday, June 9th from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. And then the other one is before summer is coming. So in cooperation with the council member Lynn Schumann, we are going to have a free rim barrel giveaway in Forest Hills in 67th Road and the Grand Central Parkway Service Way. That's on June 13th, that's a Thursday at 5 p.m. So this is the first come, first serve. So if anything, I will be back there, and please let me know. Thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay, joining us from Jackson Heights and the sliver of CD26, what side do you have? Councilmember Shekhar Krishnan.
Good evening. Oh, thank you. But yes, yesterday was my birthday. Good evening, everyone. It's so nice to see you all. Thank you so much to our chair, Anatol, to Debbie, to all the CB2 board who's here. I really appreciate coming to see you all tonight. I'm sorry I was a little bit late. Today was no school today. So childcare and rushing for after school, after camp pickup and everything was a mess. But I made it. And I'm so proud to be here. My first CB2 meeting really addressing you all. And I'm very happy to be here to do so. As you all, as Anatol mentioned too, my district now includes a bit of Woodside, so a small piece of CB2. But I know many of you all very well, and very, very happy to be here and to represent part of this community district in my council district too. And I just wanted to give a brief sense of what we've been up to in Council District 25 on all different fronts. First, starting with our community and district, as I think many of you all know, so many of my priorities in representing Jackson Heights and Elmhurst as the first Indian American ever elected to a New York City Council in its history, and also the chair of our Parks Committee in the council, representing a district where we have some of the least amount of green space in all of New York City. For me, tying those issues to our public health, our well-being is really important. And so there are different ways in our district we've tried. That's right. It is a crucial issue for us. Central to all of that is public health. My district includes Elmhurst Hospital. As we know, we were the epicenter of the pandemic, with less than one bed for every 1,000 patients that come to the doors of Elmhurst Hospital. They don't close their doors to anyone. I'm proud that in my first 2 terms in the council, I've been able to work with Speaker Adrian Adams, our borough president, Donovan Richards, to secure over $27 million for Elmhurst Hospital. And long overdue, but so needed, from our maternal health clinic to a new entrance for Elmhurst Hospital to a new hand surgery clinic for the hand surgeon. It was the first ever hand surgery clinic at Elmhurst Hospital. And I will continue to get more and more resources to make up for the historic inequity when it comes to public health and access to health for immigrant communities like our own. Of course, I find that when it comes to fighting for our communities, things like sanitation, just like public health, are crucial issues. And so in my district, working with both ACE, a nonprofit organization that many of you all know, working with DSNY, I've increased sanitation pickups on Roosevelt Avenue and really in the surrounding areas, Diversity Plaza, all around there, to 7 days a week, 6 days, 3 times a day, on the weekend, on Sundays, twice a day. But it's been a priority of mine to allocate more funding from our own office to increase sanitation and pick up and sanitation services in our district. And of course, as Parks Chair, I also want to make sure that we are setting the example of how we need more investments in our parks and playgrounds. So in my term in office, we are doing a full renovation, the only park chosen in Queens for the citywide Parks Equity Initiative, for a full funding of Frank O'Connor Playground, which is the playground across the street from Elmhurst Hospital, which will be renovated. Also with the tribute included to our Elmhurst heroes at Elmhurst Hospital, as well as to the lives tragically lost during COVID of Elmhurst residents too. We've also renovated Northern Playground as part of this as well. And of course, working with Donovan Richards, who was able to renovate Traverse Park 2, our main park in Jackson Heights. Zooming out a bit on a larger legislative level, we've been proud to work on a number of different initiatives. One that I know is important to many residents here too, as a former civil rights lawyer fighting for fair housing justice, representing tenants being displaced and evicted. One of the biggest issues I saw is representing tenants who have been displaced by fires from their homes. We've seen it here in Sunnyside. We've seen it in Jackson Heights. We're seeing it all over the city. When tenants are displaced from their homes because of fires, it is the most egregious situation. You'd think every city service would descend to support them, but it's when tenants are the most vulnerable. So working with another council member, Councilmember Jen Gutierrez, I've introduced a package of legislation called the Back Home Act, which we just had a hearing about recently in a big press conference and rally, to make sure that city agencies are held accountable to hold landlords accountable when tenants are vacated from their home. So they have access to get their things, because oftentimes they're on the streets overnight, need to get back in, whether it's for basic information, medications with the senior that we saw recently, basic financial documents, to then holding HPD accountable to hold through litigation the landlord accountable to do the work necessary to bring tenants back home as quickly as possible. That's why we're calling it the Back Home Act, and it's so necessary in our city. And finally, to conclude on a couple other things, as the Parks Chair, one of our priorities has been water safety in this city. It's my belief that every single New York City child must know how to swim, must have access to a pool. But we know communities like ours often have the least access to public pools, and many of our children don't know how to swim. So to address that issue, we put forward a water safety agenda that includes a number of different initiatives. One is a bill that I've introduced to extend pool and beach season in the city. Climate change means the weather's getting warmer, but for families that don't have access to a pool or a beach otherwise, being able to take their kids to the water is very important to get comfortable with the water. That's what we're doing on the legislative front. We're also working on ways to, with our water safety swimming groups from the YMCA to other groups, find ways to train students earlier to build a pipeline of lifeguards so we don't have the lifeguard crisis we do in the city. But fundamentally, we need to increase access. And so while the Parks Department, with legislation we passed in the council, says we don't have the resources to teach every second grader how to swim, I've worked with another colleague in the council, Councilmember Julie Menon, to create a pilot that we funded with philanthropy at $1 million to pick 5 districts across the city that do not have access to a public pool to teach second graders in those districts how to swim and get them access. And we call it a pilot because in identifying those districts and at that project level, it's to show the Parks Department, if you run with this idea and program and expand it all over the city, we can make sure every single New Yorker learns how to swim, knows how to swim, has access to a pool. It is a life-saving skill. It cannot be a privilege. And that is one thing I'll continue fighting for. And finally, you know, we've had a number of different cultural events, whether it's renaming 73rd Street in Jackson Heights, Bangladesh Street. That's right, we can give it up for Bangladesh Street. Or Woodside Avenue, Little Thailand Way, or the first Songkran celebration for our Southeast Asian communities at City Hall, a Diwali celebration led by the first Indian council member who celebrates Diwali at City Hall. These are all the different ways that we will continue to push on every front to make sure that our communities are represented, they have a voice, that our communities are invested in, and I will continue doing so. The last point I'll just mention is we just recently had a town hall 2 weeks ago about the moped crisis in this city, because that is a major issue affecting our safety. We have a beautiful, beloved open street. Many of you all know 26 blocks long in our district. That's right. But it is overrun with mopeds because of poor design by the Department of Transportation that we need to fix. And that message was made loud and clear at our town hall to say, we need to make sure we are, as the needs of our streets change, we can't rely on outdated infrastructure from years ago. We need to actually rethink design as part of our streets to create safe micromobility access for those who need it, delivery workers who came and also testified in support of our issues, but also to keep the mopeds and scooters away from our children, from our pedestrian spaces, from our sidewalks, to make sure people can walk safely where they should walk. So I'm going to continue working on that issue, but it's a snapshot of different things that we've been doing and will continue to do. Thank you all so much for having me tonight too. I really appreciate it. I'm very happy to take a few questions too. Yes. Right? Tom, Tom,
Thank you, council member. How are you
Thank
today?
you, Tom. Good. Very good to see you.
Good. Thank you. As chair of the Parks Committee, I call upon you to seek investments of open public green space in our manufacturing zoned areas. Over the last few years, we have seen intense and a great deal of densification of residents in these areas, yet no investments. Our unhoused, our migrants, and those who live in grandfathered homes deserve open green space. And I would also ask, there was a study you had done some time ago where you used zip codes to determine where things are good and not good. I would argue 11101 on one side of the tracks is not the same as 11101 on the other side of the tracks. Thank you very much.
Great point, and I couldn't agree more. This is a priority of mine as the Parks Chair. This is Parks and Green Space is not just about green space. It's a racial justice issue. It is a public health issue. And so, frankly, I believe we spend too much time talking about parking in the city than we do parks. And that's something I want to continue addressing through legislation. We passed a bill of mine to require the Parks Department to study all of those dead-end street spaces, whether it's off highway, entry and exit ramps, or other just redundant parts of our street. Why don't we repurpose those for green spaces, whether it's planting more trees, community gardens. We have a community gardens hearing coming up, by the way, in next week, I think, or micro parks or other kinds of green spaces. So I'll continue to work to address that issue. I do think it's an important focus. That one more point and of course, as part of that, our tree canopy, I think, is so important. Under my leadership of the Parks Committee, we held the first ever hearing in the City Council on trees in New York City. There's a huge inequity when it comes to trees, and we all know what that means. Hotter surface temperatures, whether it's from here to the South Bronx. We need to plant more trees. We need to spend more money caring for those trees. And that's part of when we think about expanding green space, we have to think about expanding the tree canopy from NYCHA to here, because NYCHA plays a very important role in our tree canopy and creating more shade for New Yorkers given climate change. So I will keep focusing on that issue and absolutely just thank you.
But point out the areas that are prime and have an opportunity for the other people.
Absolutely. Would be happy to do it.
Badrun,
right here.
Hossein, and then Laura. And Danielle at the
First of all, happy birthday and Eid Mubarak. Next week is Eid.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I have a question about the hospital situation that you're putting funding in. So we have two hospitals around us, both Jackson-Idalis. One is Elmhurst and the other one is Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai is overly booked and so is East Elmhurst. How much can we put into the emergency rooms? Because that's where the problem is. Like, I have elderly parents, and what we do, we have to take them by car to the city because going to Elmhurst, it's hours of waiting and it's very, very hard for elderly people sitting on the chairs. So I would like to see that because we lost the hospitals are our neighbor. The other one is in Forest Hills.
Yep.
But usually when an ambulance comes in, it's really hard not to go there. My husband had a major heart attack and we had to take him to Elmhurst, but they were great. But that's where the situation is. If you're not in a high level emergency, they won't take you and you sit there for hours. And if you see, that's where I think Elmhurst we're having the most issues. I'm sure most of us know we don't have enough hospitals in this neighborhood.
Absolutely.
We need more hospitals. That's one question. And I have another question after that.
Sure. I completely agree. And I think, we work very closely in my office with Helen Artiaga and all the leadership of Elmhurst Hospital. I do believe that there's funding we put in with the last 27 million in my first two terms, or a request that we're working on this time. The emergency room is part of it too, and it's a priority of the hospitals. And so, in identifying the priorities, I work very closely with Helen, and I know she's laser focused on making sure that from entry point, the emergency room, to the NICU, to every other ward in between, that they have the resources. And frankly, as I said before, I see it as really reversing decades of inequality. The biggest issue is our public hospitals that open its doors to everyone, regardless of insurance status, immigration status, get so much less in funding, including public funding, than our private hospitals. And that has impacts on the emergency room. The stories of, as we know, sadly, far too well, whether it's now when you have an emergency or during COVID, how just overrun Elmhurst emergency rooms were. I will make sure to keep prioritizing that and working with Elmhurst to do so. I think they're very conscious of that issue, but I couldn't agree more on that point. So we'll keep prioritizing it.
So my next question, sorry, it's about teaching kids how to swim. I've always been that trying to teach kids, but I know Donovan came in, the borough president, he said he invested money in the LaGuardia Community Hospital. So not hospital, I'm sorry, LaGuardia College.
Yep.
Yeah. So my question is, why can't where we are investing, why can't have these programs do after schools for children? And why can't the federal government fund us for this? Because there are kids, we lost a lot of kids too, because from swimming. Why can't we get more federal funding? Because they're sending money everywhere, in which a lot of people don't agree with my tax money, your tax money. Why can it not invest in our community so our children are safe, just not children, even adults? And how can we invest in colleges to teach kids after school? I mean, there's not a lot of after school programs we have. I had more when I was growing up. Everything is cut. But why can't we ask for the federal government to fund us for these pilot programs?
We can definitely do that. And I know that the federal government has been, Majority Leader Schumer has worked with me to invest more with the IRA in planting trees here in this district. And I will also, advocate with them too, with our federal leaders to bring in more around swimming because it's a crisis across the country. I also there are things we can do on the city level too. To your point about colleges, I believe that our public schools, our pools, our tracks, our playgrounds have to be open and to the community. If we're going to create space where it doesn't exist, we have to do that. And so I've been talking with the DOE, identifying where the school pools are, where they can be opened up. I've been pushing the Parks Department to expand access and working with DOE to the pools, and also for training programs, right? The lifeguard testing season now ends in February, which means if you want to be a lifeguard or even learn how to be a lifeguard, you can't even take a test after February. What high school or college students know what they want to do over the summer in February. So we need to extend out the testing season, and in doing so, expand training sites and facilities too. So I just bring that up with the lifeguards to say, I think on the city level, we can do more to expand and open up our facilities, to teach kids how to swim, to train them earlier. Like one of my points of our water safety agenda was to start a junior lifeguard corps. So like in high school, work with groups like the YMCA and other swim programs, bring them into schools and have them teach children in the school pools how to swim. I think we're in a crisis. Parks will tell you it's a national crisis, and that is partly true, but I think we can do so much more to do everything we can to address this issue at every level, from children, our 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, to high school students and college students on swimming. And I will keep pushing on that issue. It's a big priority of mine. And I know Speaker Adams too, in our State of the City, has identified it as a priority as well. So I will keep pushing on my side. Absolutely. Thank you for the question.
Thank you so much for your time and came here today, and really appreciate you, and happy birthday once more time from District 24, 26, 27, because we're living this the two districts, like District 25 and District 26. So my concern is first is a safety issue. Thank you. So we are the Woodside, especially the Woodside, Sunnyside, and the border of Jackson Heights. You know the situation. And the police station 115 and 108 is really far from the Jackson Heights and Woodside. And you know the situation right now, the million of people every day are walking to the Jackson Heights. As you know, I raised this issue long time with each department. So everybody knows the situation from especially Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night. A lot of prostitution are happening in the Jackson Heights to Woodside. Now is moving to 41st and 71 to all the way the Broadway, Jackson Heights. That is totally your district and border of the District 26. So my request is already some police initiative is already, I saw that, but that is not good enough. I'm requesting to the two police station work together, make a better solution that can permanent, they can stay the border. Anything happen, because the safety, if we cannot ensure the safety, the every goal is lose, yes. Right? And this is the main reason, like is my concern as a, District 26. I live in District 26, but I work for you when the election was held, because my most family member in the District 25. Anyway, and I am very much appreciate you to everyone know that Shekhar, Shahana, and Amanda, those 3 young council members are supporting the taxi industry business when they are dying. This is the man who comes first to the street to raise his voice and save 100,000 people in our New York City taxi drivers. I'm really appreciate you, and I'm one of them. Oh. So my second issue is the hospital staff behavior. I get a couple of complaints last 1-2 years after the COVID, especially. The behavior issue is a safety security officer, including some staff. So please note that they should be friendly. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Well, first, thank you for all your service and sacrifice to our city as a taxi worker. Representing in our districts, we have the largest population of driver residents in all of New York City, and you all give me so much energy and inspiration always. I think on a couple points. So the first question you mentioned, of course, everyone has to feel safe, right? Walking down the street, whether it's Roosevelt Avenue, taking the train, safe from hate crimes that we see too. Let's definitely keep talking about, keep in mind all that you said. And one of the things also that I feel we need to work on is we have to do more on the front end to make people feel safe and to prevent crime from happening in the first place. One of the ways that a couple of the ways, both locally and policy-wise, that we need to do that. On the policy front, we haven't invested enough in mental health services for our city. That's something that, is a major issue. And if you even talk to the precincts, they'll tell you too, many of them don't feel comfortable or aren't equipped either when you have a mental health crisis to step in those situations. But unfortunately, and I forgot to mention this point, but we're battling an administration right now with the mayor who is cutting from all our essential services, from our libraries to our cultural institutions, cutting from our parks, cutting from 3K, and cutting from and not investing in mental health services either. We in the council put out a roadmap on how to invest more in mental health services. It's a priority in my district too, to keep engaging organizations that can provide mental health services, that I can engage people in crisis, whether they're homeless or they have other mental health crises, long before it gets to a point of danger. And so that's one thing I think from a preventative standpoint we can do. I also have thought, in addition to bringing more organizations to help with some of the issues we see on Roosevelt Avenue and finding ways to address them, engaging community groups that know these issues well and can help to create a safer environment on Roosevelt Avenue. We've also worked to do two things. One, to explore ways to increase lighting under the 7 train on Roosevelt Avenue, because I think that would actually be helpful as well. And also for a lot of small business owners, especially immigrant small business owners that have seen break-ins on their stores in Roosevelt, we worked with the Asian American Federation to actually bring security cameras to their small businesses, which people have found very helpful. So if they have evidence, they have footage in the event of a crime too, to be able to deter robberies and burglaries and theft that we're seeing as well. So it's really a comprehensive approach, and we will keep working on those issues, but I'm glad you raised that point.
Okay.
Hey, Laura.
Hi. Nice to see you. Thank you for raising so many important issues. Two questions. One is, so parks and libraries serve a lot of vital functions, including being where our public bathrooms are, but their hours are so limited, especially in the parks. Is there anything we can do to fund longer hours for the bathrooms to be unlocked?
Yes, it's a big issue of mine, both in two ways. One, bathrooms are not open, and also as a parent of, well, now an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old, there was just a couple of years ago a time where we couldn't even find changing stations at the bathroom when we went to go change their diapers. And so there's a huge issue there. I've spoken to the Parks Commissioner about this. We've raised this issue numerous times at hearings. I'm going to keep pushing. One of the biggest issues is the parks budget it's been cut in so many ways by a mayor, by the way, who campaigned on a promise of increasing the parks budget to 1%, just 1% of $100 billion budget.
We passed a resolution in support of the.
And I remember that too. Yes. And I appreciate that very much. I mean, we fought in my term as parks chair 2 years ago. We achieved the highest budget for parks ever in its history. But the mayor has been cutting it since then. We're not going towards 1%, we're going below it. The reason why I bring that up is because that directly impacts staffing and workers. So one of the things I'm focused on right now is the mayor has cut multiple times from parks. He cut a parks workforce program, the Parks Opportunity Program, that funds workers who clean our bathrooms, who clean the parks. To me, a parks budget is fundamentally a workers' budget. We were able to reverse that through a lot of public pressure in the fall, and he reopened the job center at Flushing Meadows. But now he's cut the second shift program, which is literally what it means. It's a second shift for cleaning for our parks, Thursday to Sunday in the evenings till 7 p.m. or later. If we don't have, and we're fighting now to reverse that. We also have to fight to reverse cuts to school lunches, which is a different story, but I saw that too when I saw my kids' lunch menu and I was like, what happened here? Thankfully, we were able to win that. But I raised that to say, if we can't get these programs funded, the Parks Department doesn't have the staff to keep the bathrooms open as long as they should be, or even clean them, frankly. And so that's why I've kept saying, when you cut from parks, it's overflowing trash cans and its bathrooms are unclean. I'll keep pushing that issue. They need to be open longer, but the first response I get is that we don't have the budget to do so. But I know that a lot of members in the council feel the same way as I do, so I will keep prioritizing that issue.
Thank you. The other thing is we're very excited about the Queens Waterfront Greenway, and we know that the city's Greenway Master Plan is due at the end of 2024. Do you have any updates on how developing that is going?
Yes. So I know, I know Parks has been working on that too. There've been a lot of exciting announcements about greenways and investments coming, both from the city and from the federal government.
Yes.
I will keep talking with Parks about it. They know that it's a priority for the councils, both the Greenway Master Plan, the Streets Master Plan.
Yes.
There's a lot we need to do, and it frankly requires pushing this administration to do more on that front. But we no updates yet in terms of the details, but I know that it's coming soon, and so we're keeping a close eye on it too. And just on a side note, thank you all for your advocacy for safe streets, whether it's Families for Safe Streets or transportation alternatives. Streets are for people. I strongly believe that, and there's much more we have to do to live in a city where a child's death, a senior's death because of being hit by a car should not be happening. And so I just appreciate all the work that you do in this community and across the city, and I'm proud to work with you all to make our streets safer.
Thank you.
Okay, Danielle.
Hi, thank you. Happy birthday. And I also wanted to thank you for your advocacy along with this community board, CB1, and our council member and others, and 22's council member, for big reuse.
Absolutely.
I'm almost afraid to ask this question because I kind of know the answer, but is it lost? Is it going to go away?
Well, coming from, representing community coalitions and suing the city over fair housing lawsuits, I refuse to ever accept it's lost. We have to keep pushing and fighting. And so I was just speaking to Councilmember One today. Councilmember Lincoln Ressler is also involved because we're trying together to find an alternative site for big reuse. We've done, as you all know, press conferences together. I've spoken directly with the Parks Commissioner numerous times. We've also brought in Councilmember Sean Abreu, who's the sanitation chair, to work at DSNY. We're actually meeting with them. Well, it's supposed to be tomorrow. I think it's being pushed till next week, but very, very soon to find ways to say, look, we are working hard with people on the Hochul administration to find state DOT sites, any site we can, whether it's in this district or whether it's in North Brooklyn, where it was originally supposed to go. And to say, really give us time, parks, sanitation. My frustration has been, I hate when agencies point the finger to the other and say, look, it's not our fault, it's your fault. So I said, I don't care. You all have to solve this problem because it's a major issue for Western Queens. We still don't have a solution yet, but we will keep pushing. And at least for right now, we're pushing to just get more time so we can find a site. At least we've tried a couple of them, haven't found one yet. But we're very much on this issue and trying to bring in everybody who could help play a role in it. So we're not out yet, and we'll keep pushing.
We'll end it there. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, everyone. It's so good to see you. I've got to run to another event now, but I will be back in the fall. I want to wish you all a very happy summer and get some rest as well. I know summertime also for many of us as parents too is chaos. Talking about summer camps, so good luck to all the parents with young kids too. But look forward to seeing you all in the fall again. Please reach out to our office anytime, and thank you for having me tonight too. Good to see you all.
Thank you again, Councilmember Krishnan. All right, let's see if we can speed run through the next. We have 12 more minutes of representative comments, 30 minutes of public comment. So let's just power through it again. All right, next is Natalie, Farah, Claire.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Natalie. I'm representing Assemblymember Juan Ardilla, and Assemblymember and I hope everyone's having a pleasant evening. The member is happy to share that after a vigorous debate with Republican members, one of the bills he authored to combat utility rate hike increases has passed both the Senate and the Assembly this week. The bill, A4895, gives working class families a fighting chance against cost of living increases and surprise rate hikes by mandating that gas and electric companies provide 60 days notice directly to consumers about any such changes to their rates. This marks the fourth bill that the Assembly member led to have passed the legislature, and it is on track to be the fourth bill to be signed by the governor. Additionally, Assemblymember Juan Ardilla's vote helped to pass a number of priority bills this past month, such as the Retail Workers Safety Act, the Lead Paint Right to Know Act, as well as an expansion of cooling assistance offered through the Home Energy Assistance Program. The Assembly member is now pushing to pass more cost-saving, revenue-generating bills in the Assembly before the end of session this week, such as the New York Heat Act, the Climate Superfund Act, and the Packaging Reduction and Recycling Act. Lastly, but perhaps most pressingly, Assemblymember Juan Ardila would like to share a statement that he made against the governor's surprise announcement yesterday on congestion pricing. He said this last-minute unilateral delay of implementing congestion pricing is unacceptable. Countless New Yorkers, their elected officials, and their esteemed courts have already given this plan the green light. Over $500 million in taxpayer dollars has already been spent or contracted for it, and that was not the way to get the congestion pricing done right. With that said, the member has an update on the plan that the governor proposed. After conferencing with fellow Assembly members in Albany earlier tonight, they have agreed to not move forward with the governor's proposal to raise the payroll mobility tax, and they will get congestion pricing back on track this summer. If there are any questions or concerns about anything, please don't hesitate to contact our office via email at ardilaj@nyassembly.gov, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you so much.
Great timing.
Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. I'm going to try to make this quick because we have a lot of updates for everyone. Firstly, last Thursday, Councilmember One announced construction on a new school at Hunters Point South, which will begin this fall with completion by the 2027 to 2028 school year. This is a 572-seat school, which will be located at 2nd Street and 54th Avenue. And when taken together with the new elementary school currently underway at 2310 43rd Avenue in Court Square, it will bring over 1,100 new school seats to Long Island City within the next 3 years. On Saturday, June 8th, we'll also be hosting a press conference for the residents impacted by the Sunnyside fire. The goal of this press conference will urge A&E to extend the 6-month leases offered to residents who have been displaced. If anyone is interested to find out more, please contact us via our district email. Thirdly, we hosted an HPD clinic today and we'll be hosting one on July 31st. If you or anyone you know needs any assistance with any HPD related issues, please contact us and we'll be more than happy to make an appointment for you. We've also hosted quite a few clinics this past month where we helped several constituents with Section 8 vouchers earlier this week. The Section 8 application does close on Sunday. If you do need assistance applying for Section 8, please reach out to our office. We also provided assistance to over 70 people in applying for ID NYC, and we gave away around 100 barrels this past Saturday at the Sunnyside Green Market. Legislation-wise, this past Tuesday, Councilmember One chaired the Contracts Committee hearing to oversight and evaluate the progress of reforms made to accelerate nonprofit contract payments. Councilmember One previously introduced several pieces of legislation that will provide more transparency for city contracting, as well as close the incredibly long wait for contract payment.
Tom, one question.
Thank you, last night in the Blissful section of Long Island City, we had a fire. Thankfully, no one was harmed, and we really are grateful to the FDNY. They had to drag out of the apartment in a 6-family a lithium-ion battery that went up in flames inside the apartment. Is there anything the city council member can do to provide safe boxes where we're not storing these lithium-ion batteries in homes? As you know, many of the homes in Blissful are wood, we're all attached. It could have been horrendous if it wasn't for the efforts of the FDNY. Can we rely on the city council member to provide some type of safe boxes to help prevent fires?
I know, first of all, I'm so sorry that happened. That sounds terrifying, and I hope everyone's okay. It's, fires are traumatizing. And I know Councilmember One is dedicated to fire safety, and I know she's very interested in pursuing safer methods of storing lithium-ion batteries. So I'll definitely pass that information on to her. Anyone else? All right.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening.
What's up, CB2? Okay, hi. My name is Claire Collins. I'm a community CB2 liaison for Donovan Richards, Queensborough president. Okay, so first thing I'm going to talk about is Ravenswood, which is not technically this district, but it's really close. You know, the smokestacks, they're taking them down. It's going to become renewable. Yes, thanks, Danielle. So we are currently surveying. We're doing a redevelopment study with our partners at NYSERDA and Rise, Light, and Power, because we want to hear from the people who live and work in that area in Ravenswood and Queensbridge about what they want to see. So the website for that is reimagineravenswood.com. Please share that with anyone that you know who lives in the area. All right, next up we have events. Thursday, June 13th, 6 p.m., Pride Month celebration at Queensborough Hall. Saturday, June 15th, 1 p.m., Father's Day barbecue in the back lawn of Queensborough Hall. All fathers pull up. Afternoon of entertainment and food. Okay, Thursday, June 20th, Philippine Independence Day celebration. Woo, Philippines! Where did I lost my, at 6 p.m. Queensborough Hall. Lastly, the month of June is recognized as Gun Violence Awareness Month, and Borough President Richards will hold his third annual Queens Promotes Peace Conference on Monday, June 24th at 4 p.m. The location will be confirmed in the coming weeks, and you can always RSVP to all of our events, queensbp.org/RSVP. On behalf of BP Richards, I want to wish everyone, all the fathers, a happy Father's Day. Yeah, no questions? Oh.
All right, Tom and Laura, that's it. Thank you. Is there any update on the 10 million awarded to Long Island City and how I believe our president of Queens is facilitating that, correct?
So I believe you're referring to the capital allocation investment, right?
It's the downtown revitalization initiative that awarded Long Island City 10 million.
Like off the top of my head, I can't give you a response to that, but I'll put it in my notes and then I'll give you my email and we can follow up. But yeah, I don't work in fiscal. I'm sorry.
Don't worry. Thank you. Thank you very much. Laura?
Sure. Just so there was a charter review commission hearing the other morning. We didn't get a lot of notice. Is it still possible to submit comments?
You know, that's a good question. I will get back to you on that.
Enough. Thank
Yeah.
you.
I think it was till the end of the month or something like that. Yeah.
Oh, it's the mayor's office.
Oh, mayor's office.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because it was City Hall. Okay, thank you.
Okay, next is Javier, then Asif Ali, and then Siobhan from SCS. Are you here? Okay, so you're last. Javier, where'd you go?
I'm right here.
Oh, there you are.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Hello, CB2. I love when I come up here and everyone smiles because I'm the last elected official rep. I only have one big announcement that I want to share that really pertains to this community board. Scooters are a huge issue. When the DA came, I know she talked to a lot of you, and a lot of you mentioned that many of these people who use these scooters are using it for their livelihoods. And the DA totally understands that, and she is very aware, and it's been brought up to her attention many times. However, the issue she's trying to tackle is those who are unregistered and not using the scooters for this said purpose. And because of that, she has confiscated 95 illegal and unregistered scooters in the last month, which now brings the total to illegal and unregistered scooters to 412. She works with the precincts to do so. And once the scooters are taken, if it is registered and if it is a legal scooter, the owner can come back and claim it, just has to prove that, you know, it was registered and all that. However, many of these are not. And because of this, we have seen a decrease in the accidents. That's the only real big announcement I have, but I'm free to take any questions. Yes.
The issue is that many people purchase and don't register mopeds, not knowing that they're illegal. There is state legislation pending that would require this information at the point of sale and target enforcement toward the shops so that recent immigrants and low-income folks who really do need these for their livelihoods aren't basically fleeced out of what little they have. This approach to just scoop parked mopeds off the sidewalk really doesn't address this at all and just forces people into even greater cycles of poverty.
I 100% hear your concern. It's a concern that's been brought up to our office. We're trying to work for a way around it because there's a whole bunch of different viewpoints when it comes to this issue, but I'm more than happy to continue to bring this information back, because I'm part of community partnerships. So I cover mainly Western Queens, but the other side of Queens on like the eastern side of Queens has a very different ideology when it comes to this issue. So I'm more than happy.
It's not ideological,
No.
It's a practical.
I hear what you're saying, and I'm more than happy to bring what I hear from every one of these community boards and my events that I attend back to the office. And hopefully we can do some outreach events and we can take an approach that makes everyone happy.
I mean, people who live in areas that don't have a lot of protected bike infrastructure often prefer these to go the longer distances, or they're dealing with buildings that have banned e-bikes. There are lots of reasons why people are getting mopeds out of necessity, and you have to address the root of the cause, not just penalize people for doing what makes sense.
I hear you. And I will, after this offline, I'll give you my card and maybe we could connect offline. I connect you to someone in my office to bring these concerns directly.
So I've spoken with delivery workers and they do feel that they are being targeted. And their property is getting swept up in this.
Yeah. I'm more than happy to bring any concern you have. I'll talk offline with you. Listen, I understand the concerns. I'm just reporting what our office is doing, but I'm more than happy to take this back and see if there's a different approach we can take.
Thank you.
So I have some issues in our community, but we emailed her. How do we get in contact with your office? No one returns our calls. No one answers our emails. So how do we get in touch with them? Because we have an issue where there's a black market in real estate. People are reselling stuff, taking money. There's a big issue and there is a case going on, but Melinda Katz never returns any emails. We can't get in touch with her. How do we do that? And I could even tell you of several cases that people are having issues, but your office never responds to anything. There's a case for 3 years sitting in the district and there was given paperwork. We emailed, called, no response. So I would like someone to get back to these people. And can you tell me how can we get response to that? And it was investigated. It was proven. Everything was done. And still we got no response.
I will give you my contact information personally. I can't speak on behalf of our entire office. I can speak on Javier Figueroa. Javier Figueroa will return your email, will return your call, and I will bring it up directly to my supervisor, my director, who is in constant contact with the DA. So even if it's not an answer that maybe you'll like, or I'll get you an answer, just email me. I'll give you my contact information.
Thank you so much, Javier Figueroa. When Javier takes more than a minute, you know it's real. Okay, then Asif from Woodside on the Move, and then Siobhan from Sunnyside Community Service.
Hi, everyone. My name is Asif, and I'm outreach coordinator with Woodside on the Move. I just wanted to highlight some of our work from the past month, as well as some upcoming projects. We've been hosting housing workshops every Tuesday of the month. The workshops include Housing Connect, Benefit Services, and Know Your Rights. We'd like to thank Queens Legal Services for their assistance with some of the workshops. If you'd like to join us for any of the workshops, please reach out to our office at 718-476-8449. Along with housing workshops, we've also been assisting community members with Section 8 applications. Unfortunately, we don't have any more appointments available at the moment, but if anything opens up, we'll put something out. And last month, we held our annual Woodside Queens Spring Festival. The festival consisted of live performances, vendors, and a community block. We thank our partners and everyone who attended the event for making it possible. We'll be hosting our Fall Festival in October. On June 15th, we'll be hosting our monthly community cleanup, which will start our office on 52nd Street. If you'd like to volunteer with us for the community cleanup, please check us out on social media or reach out to me at aali@7move.org. Thank you for your time. Have a good night.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Siobhan with Sunnyside Community Services. I wanted to share that on Monday, we're hosting the New York City Department for the Aging to have a resource fair and a walk. If you didn't know, June is World Elder Abuse Awareness Month, and we're really proud to have services to provide support to people, especially older adults that are victims of abuse. We provide support, groups, counseling, and services to connect to legal aid, housing, and other safety resources. There's flyers in the back that I'll leave if you'd like to join us from 9:30 to noon. And then lastly, I'll share, we're really proud, Sunnyside Community Services. This is our 50th anniversary. So we have some very special newsletters in the back. We ask you to pick one up, take a look at the impact we've made in community. And if you want to get in touch with us, there's some information there. Thank you so much.
All right, that wraps the representatives and community friends part of the meeting. Now we're at public comment. Now, if you're here to talk about the city of Yes, that's not this section of the meeting. So if it's a general comment, now is your time. So raise your hand if you're here to talk about city of Yes. Okay, great. So we'll just go down the list. Lou, is it Vanek? There, great. Then it's Beatrice and then Marge.
Okay. Good evening, neighbors. I'm Lou Venich, a longtime resident of 49th Street in Sunnyside and a retired transportation planner. Thanks for hearing my comments on DOT's new Queen Boulevard.
We can't hear you too well. Can you speak into the mic?
Can't get too much closer. Thanks for hearing my comments on DOT's new Queens Boulevard plan as presented to your Transportation Committee last month. We should applaud the city's vital work to redesign our streets for better safety and multimodal mobility. Let's not leave out this busy stretch of Queens Boulevard, but it presents some difficult choices. Before this project proceeds, DOT should explain the planning process it applied to determine that protected bike lanes are preferable to dedicated bus lanes for this congested stretch of the Queens bus network. DOT's PowerPoint notes that 2 local and 11 express bus routes use this segment in mixed traffic, which the current plan would reduce by 1 lane each way. Its field survey showed that bike lanes and bus lanes were the 2 changes most urged by respondents. The very next slide introduces DOT's proposal, including bike lanes, without explaining the choice. Many Sunnysiders, especially seniors, find the local bus routes more convenient and easier to access than the elevated 7 line. New buildings from Woodside to Long Island City are adding ridership demand on the 7. Buses offer needed transit capacity on this corridor, if not mired in traffic. Queens Boulevard's bus lanes don't extend west of Roosevelt, but there already are protected bike lanes parallel to this segment on 43rd and Skillman Avenues nearby. They can be connected at both ends to link up the Queens bike network through Sunnyside, allowing for bus lanes on the boulevard and avoiding conflicts with the heavy pedestrian flows to and from the 7 line stations. Most of DOT's other smart proposed Queens Boulevard improvements can work with bus lanes also. Please ask DOT if it considered this alternative before it advances its recommended project. And thanks for your attention.
Beatrice? Then Nigel.
Thank you. My name is Beatrice Ruiz. I live right behind this block, and I'm here to make everybody aware, and we need help. Right here in this area of this part of Sunnyside, we have a business 2 businesses away from here. He is an auto mechanic shop, and he has taken over all our parking spaces. I have counted more than 40 cars that he has parked there. He keeps them there. He has been in that business probably for 4 to 8 months, and he keeps those cars there permanently for sale. Reg, he thinks this is Flushing reg area, and we need assistance from community board. I took the day off yesterday and the day before, and I visited 108. I visited Louis. I'm sorry. I visited Juan, and I visited Julie's office. And now I'm here. I cannot do it on my own. I can go. One time I did it in Jackson Heights where I collected 100 signatures for something for Helen Marshall, and I became very close friend of Helen Marshall. Unfortunately, Helen Marshall is not here anymore. Okay, and Jose Peralta, also very good friend of mine, is no longer there. So now I am begging you guys to do something about this guy because it's a major cancer for us. I work at night. I come home at 11 o'clock and I have to go and park at the B6 because there is no parking in Sunnyside. There is no parking underneath the train. There is no parking behind. He's double park. He has illegal license plates. He has all the tow trucks in the middle of the night. I walk my dog after I come from work at 11 o'clock, and I purposely walk his area, and he has tow trucks all double park. Okay, it's $120. Can you imagine how much money the city can make on that? And also, major thing, his establishment had at least 40 cars inside. That's a major building department issue, a DEP issue, and also a building department. And somebody has to do something to this guy right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Marge, and then, yeah. Oh, yeah. Wait for the mic. And yeah, Beatrice, you can come back.
Quick question, were you witnessing any blockages of the sidewalk with these cars as well?
Sure, you can go right.
Okay.
You can go there right now.
Okay, yeah, I did.
Oh, sidewalk.
It's just you didn't mention it, so I was just wondering.
And the seniors come out, they don't want to walk anymore on Queens Boulevard because the sidewalk, that's another issue. That's that new building, the sidewalk is really an issue, how to walk there.
Yeah.
And God forbid in the winter time. So
were you able to put 311 complaints in? And follow up with the office? Because I think the office can follow up with your 311
we are sick
complaints.
of calling 311.
Okay,
All
great.
of us.
Did
All
you
of
give
us
it to the office?
have called 311. So what's going to be done?
All right, so hopefully the office can follow up with that
And I
too.
understand that the community board is aware of this. Yes, we are. Okay?
We have several complaints and we are.
Well, we're done with the complaints. Now we need.
What is the name of the business?
Quality Auto Mechanics. It's right there.
Come to the mic. We can't hear you.
You get out of this here.
Yeah, I just wanted to know the name because you didn't state it. So I want to make sure for the record. Quality Auto
Mechanic.
Auto Mechanic.
4301 to 39 place.
Okay, thank you.
39th Street.
Thank you. The one thing I know, my colleague on the board who mentioned about 311, I can tell you, I've had we have a tenants association in my apartment building, and we've had issues in the past, and we did what we call a 311 campaign. It's frustrating because you go on after you call and you see that they close it and nothing happens. And it seems like nothing's ever going to happen. But what we did after we made these 311 campaigns, which we were recommended to do by Debbie at the office, and also through a couple of the community groups for some issues. And what they actually did is afterwards, we take the number they give you, the reference number. It's like a C-311 something.
It's 331.
Yeah. So we put that in a spreadsheet. We gave it to the community board office. They were able to follow up and prove that there were so many complaints. Why wasn't anything done?
Well,
so I'm just saying it may be frustrating and you may feel like you're done, but it actually has an impact.
Well, my next thing is I'm going to go around the neighborhood and collect signatures and then call Channel 47 and Channel 4. And then what is the community going to do about this?
Yeah, I just want to say that I ride my bike home from work there every day, and I see that, as you call it, a cancer, the spreading of sidewalk parking, double lane parking. Now across the street, they're also parking on the sidewalk there. It grows and grows and grows. I report these cars every day to 311. The NYPD closes it out without any action taken. I'm doing this so that there is a record of these 311 complaints.
Yes.
I appreciate the community effort. I think getting the community effort, I think it is very sad that it was a flower shop and now it's an auto mechanic which is fine to operate in the city, but you can't park on our sidewalks. You can't park in our bike lanes. You can't park in there's currently a vehicle parked in the crosswalk there. Yeah.
43rd Avenue is a major area for the people that walk from the city or take the bikes from the city. So now all of that is blocked. And the seniors walk around when they come from lunch, out of lunch, and they walk that area. So, and they have walkers. So it's a major issue. It's a cancer to be exploding on our neighborhood soon.
Thank you very much for talking.
Time about a fire in that place.
Thank you. Okay, Marge, then Nigel Rawlings, and then Jenny. Jenny Dubnow.
Hi, I live on 64th Street, just south of the BQE, and we had major flooding after Hurricane Ida. I know that was 2.5 years ago. We keep getting flooding, nowhere near as bad. But with Ida, we have a common driveway that's below ground level, but our basement doors open into the common alley. We had 3 to 6 feet of water in our basements. Senator Schumer was in our backyard. You know, everyone from the city was in our backyard. I wrote a number of emails to CB2 asking for a hearing about flooding and asking to have the DEP invited to see what they would do for our neighborhood. Even as recently as a few months ago, there's my alleyway, there's houses on 48th Avenue. So they back onto the alley and then there's a wall. There was water coming over the wall. So 48th Avenue, there's not enough sewer capacity. So 48th Avenue floods. All the houses there, the water was going into their backyards, falling over the wall into our community drive. I went to a meeting a few months ago in East Elmhurst, Jackson Heights, and some local people organized it, but the congresswoman was there. I forget who it was. And they had the DP, they had, I don't know, they had several people from the DP, and they had this woman, Kat, I think her name's Breslin, from Donovan Richard's office. And she came to my community after Ida. But the DP was presenting about, you know, absorbent concrete that they could put in the parking lane of the street and how that would absorb a lot of water from going into the sewer. They were talking about these round things they could put in the sidewalk that would take some of the water before it even went into the sewer. I mean, we did get rain gardens and they did put a big new pipe on 69th Street. But I'm really upset that CB2 never picked up the baton on this despite multiple emails from me. And I live just on the other side of the BQE from where 3 people drowned in their basement apartment. So, you know, luckily we haven't had that level of flooding since, but we've had some flooding and it's just going to continue. And I don't understand why. You know, at that meeting, the DEP was like, oh, we have this absorbent concrete. We put 2 or 3 miles of it in the whole city.
Marge.
Like, wow. Okay,
Marge, thank you. No, Marge, don't go anywhere. Marge, it's Maury. Hi, Marge. Thank you so much for coming and bringing this up again. Obviously, as we enter hurricane season, this is a big issue again. I remember a couple of years ago when I was chair, we discussed this. Actually, what happened is we followed up and I worked with Debbie and then we coordinated with Councilwoman Wan's office and we had in this office, in this room, in this actual very room, we had our our town hall meeting. Pat Florio was there. She was involved in it as well, because she was very concerned, as you are, and for good reason. So maybe it's now we have to reach out to our electeds and have another town hall to bring this issue up, because I remember when the DEP came to that event, they talked about going out and maybe clearing some of the catch basins, as they always say, but there's obviously a bigger issue with this. So I would say, you know, because we did it back then, maybe it's time for another one, and maybe the community board and the council and the electeds can coordinate for another town hall on this issue.
Okay, but Pat found an item in your. Okay, it's full. It's not the catch basins, it's the capacity when there's a heavy rainstorm, okay? And if the streets can be made absorbent to pick up some of the rainwater, it doesn't all have to go in the sewer system. So why can't we be prioritized to get that kind of concrete on our neighborhood streets?
I'm going to pass the mic, but I think the main thing is we need to have another town hall and follow up and say, hey, you promised us this last time, DEP, what's going on?
We've had discussions about local flooding as a standing agenda item for a couple of months now. You're always welcome to join the fourth Thursday of the month, 6:30 p.m. on Zoom. This month will be no different. I'd really love to see these emails that you sent the board office, and possibly come for a walkthrough of the area. We'd also love to have DEP join, and happy to work with you. We've had presentations about absorbent
Concrete.
For Sunnyside Gardens, but yes, I absolutely love to see more of this throughout the district, and
I was going to ask about this item on the fiscal year 24 adopted budget. That's the year that's just ending now, right? And it says request reconstruct streets, Wynwood streets from 65th Place to 60th Street, Laurel to, so this was in, but nothing happened as far as I know. But it was in this year as number 5 priority. So the year is over in a few weeks, right?
Yeah, you're correct. Nothing has happened, but the community board has dealt with it. We've dealt with it many times. We've asked DEP to come in many times to explain it. Apparently, the answer is that, as you said, they don't have the capacity. They have to put in infrastructure. That costs money, and they don't feel like spending it here.
Okay. Well, they're doing it in Jackson Heights and East Elmhurst. They're putting in actual flood monitors on
It is very
light poles and
frustrating.
stuff, you know?
It's frustrating to us also.
Okay. So maybe you can move it from 5 to 1.
It's been on our request for the last 10 years.
Yeah, I don't have a question. I just have a comment to confirm this, because Marge lives around the block from me, and our community garden, our community driveways definitely were bathtubs. I have photo evidence of Ida being a bathtub. We are scared. Our neighbors drowned. We are very concerned about renovating a basement just to get it ripped up again. And it is a serious, serious infrastructure problem that, even though DEP refuses to spend here, there are many families in our community that are very scared when it rains every time.
PTSD.
It's a very serious thing. It's no hyperbole here.
Can I just add to this? I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Is there someone else?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Marge, thank you for your comments. And I urge the chair to take heed from the community. We must have another meeting. It's my understanding that the Congressmember Nydia has dedicated federal funds for infrastructure, and it's up to the city council member to decide where that money is spent. I've asked these questions myself and have received no answers. I would appreciate having DEP here, having the council member here, and the Congresswoman here to answer our questions.
Pat, last question on this, please.
Yes. I just wanted to point out that we have continued to increase this on our priority list higher and higher. as Stephen mentioned, for the last 10 years. And so when we're putting in the request, we can take letters from community members and organizations to add to that as we put it in. So I would encourage you to even if you just like send the emails that you sent to whomever, we can attach that to our submission for the treasurer, for the budget submission. I understand that it's really frustrating and that, like, I'm just saying, like, this is yet another thing that you can, take your complaints to. But, this is the way that our, the budgeting systems work. And I also want to point out that we keep things on the list until they're done. So we are not going to not continue to advocate for you. And so please know that CB2 does support you. But like, also we're advisory. Like, we literally can only do so much. So thank you so much for continuing to advocate and bring this to our attention.
Thank you.
Nigel, sorry about that. And then Jenny, and then LaGuardia.
Hi, everyone. Long time since I was up here. Today, as many of you know, is the 80th anniversary of D-Day. I have those souls in my mind very much today. The bravery, the courage is just beyond our imagination. What they did in the name of freedom and democracy. In that respect, it's really nice to see something like this taking place where we have voice. And you're going to hear my voice. One of those brave souls lived to be over 100. His name's Tony Vaccaro. And he was my neighbor, lived across the street until he passed away about a year ago. He just made it to 100. He was on the beach at Omaha. Very fine, very, very fine, magnificent old gentleman. He would be turning in his grave if he had witnessed what I had to experience, a trauma on Tuesday evening, just driving around the corner, trying to park my car on 47th Avenue and Vernon Boulevard, right outside a couple of the trendy restaurants there, the Blend and the, what is it, Kenny? What's the Woodbines? Woodbines, come on, Kenny. Woodbine. Anyway, I was sitting at a red light, waiting to make a left turn, minding my business, and a few cyclists come along in the middle of the street on my left side. I'm making a left turn. And I think, oh, there's a few cyclists in the street. And then I look around, and there's a few more, and then there's a few more, and then there's a lot more. And it becomes a gang, a swarming gang of cyclists. We're talking about a roving, wild gang of cyclists terrorizing the streets. They were coming the wrong way down 47th Avenue. They were not obeying any of the bike lanes. They were way out of the bike lanes, and then they all went through the red light. And when I looked out of the window and I said, hey, what the heck you think you're doing? They all cursed at me and gave me the finger and abused me and made me out to be the madman. No more bike gangs, okay? No more bike gangs. I'm not putting up with it, and my neighbors in my neighborhood are not putting up with it either. I've lived there 44 years, and I'm sick and tired of it. And I've come here to have my voice heard, and I hope you've heard it. No more bike gangs.
Can't argue with that. Jenny.
Hey, everybody. Jenny Dubnow here, and I'm with the Western Queens Community Land Trust. And before we all break from the summer, I think on behalf of the Western Queens CLT, I just wanted to express to Community Board are very deep concerns about the pending one LIC upzoning. We have multiple concerns, and we know that things will pick up again in September. Our major concerns are environmental in terms of overbuilding in the floodplain and not dealing with infrastructure. And our primary concern is affordability, because there's basically a major upzoning, and that's really all this plan seems to be, where they just want to, on steroids, do what has been happening so far in LIC, which is unaffordable housing that people here who live here already cannot afford without providing for people who already live here. Parks, fixing NYCHA apartments, making sure that the infrastructure, that the flooding is addressed. There are many things. And then another kind of crucial aspect of this is particular to Annabelle Basin, where there are 4 public sites. It's very important to many community members that those sites remain for the public good and the public use. We don't want to see large, unaffordable towers built by groups like TF Cornerstone built on those sites. And that is what has happened a lot in the past. We want to ensure that that's the case. Another concern we have is with the process of this supposed community plan doesn't seem to be very rigorous in terms of the outreach to the community. It seems like it was a preordained upzoning, and there's really no attention being paid to larger planning goals, education, infrastructure, et cetera. It's just a real estate upzoning. We urge the community board to maybe let the Western Queens CLT, together with the Long Island City Coalition, present to you an alternative plan that's being worked on primarily by the Long Island City Coalition. Western Queens CLT is supportive of this, that offers an alternative, particularly for the waterfront, to let it be mostly parkland, no big upzoning, and we would like that DOE building on Annabelle Basin to be a community land trust. We have a rigorous plan. We have presented to the EDC. We'd love to present it to you guys too, for community use, affordable space for community use. So.
Joby, Ken?
Sorry. Hi, my name is Joby Jacob. I'm a professor at LaGuardia Community College. Thank you, members of the board, for giving me a few moments of your time. I'm speaking on my own behalf today, so I can be a little bit extra. And, in March 2013, as I finished teaching a class, I walked outside of our C building and I saw a lot of people gathered across Thompson Avenue. It would only be later that day that I would realize that what I had seen was the aftermath of a crash that killed a high school student, Tenzing Drudak, and injured several other students. Their only mistake that day was thinking that they'd be safe on a sidewalk on Thompson Avenue. Every day, our students are subjected to honking, aggressive turning, inching into crosswalks, and so much more aggressive behavior by drivers who think they're still on a highway and forget that this street serves a community college and 4 high schools. We need to change Thompson Avenue from essentially a highway into a safe neighborhood street. That's why I really love what I've seen in the presentation for Thompson Avenue, which is an addendum to the presentation for Queens Boulevard. Finally, DOT is presenting a concept that addresses the needs of our community. I realize that Thompson Avenue is a key and convenient access point to the bridge, but that access and that convenience cannot come at the cost of the safety of the people, the students, the faculty, the staff who are walking on Thompson Avenue. Thank you.
Ken?
Good evening, everyone. All right, I'm Kenneth Adams. I'm the president of LaGuardia Community College. I work with Joby. Joby, I'll give you your suit and tie back after the meeting. You give me my T-shirt back. And I'm here to hammer home Joby's point. Much of this is what I've learned from him, but it's serious for us. And at the same time, we're really hopeful that DOT will begin to make these changes on Thompson Avenue. just a little update. In 2023, we served about 23,000 students at LaGuardia in our pre-college, associate degree, workforce development, continuing ed, ESL, all those programs. And as you all know, consistent with the demographics of Queens, our student population really reflects the demographic of Queens. 52% of our students are born outside the US. They come from 130 countries and this year speak 54 heritage languages. The mix changes every semester, but it's an incredible group of students, as you know. More than half of first-generation college students, virtually all of our students are ethnic minorities. 48% are Hispanic. LaGuardia is actually recognized by the federal government as an HSI, a Hispanic serving institution. Although I like to point out that the second largest group of students after students born in the US at LaGuardia are from Ecuador. The third largest group are from Bangladesh, and then so the mix is really incredible. In any case, all of this is to say that LaGuardia opens its doors to many people from all ages and backgrounds, and yes, countries of origin, to come to a safe place to learn and to get their associate degrees, to learn their skills, and to move on. And we are really excited, as I said, to be working with New York City DOT and their Open Streets program. Some of you may have noticed this, to create the LaGuardia Community Greenway, which is a new open space for this community on 29th Street between Skillman and 47th Avenue. DOT, again, you probably know this, but recently eliminated parking on that block. It's all signed for no standing right now. And we've begun to do the Open Streets programming as part of a project we call the LaGuardia Community Greenway to connect that space actually all the way down to Dutch Kills. This was a project designed by our environmental science students. So we invite you all to come and enjoy our cultural and educational programming that we host on the Greenway on 29th Street every Wednesday and soon on other occasions. And we do that with support from organizations like the Hispanic Federation, Long Island City Partnership, Community Board, of course, Community Capacity Development, and Sunnyside Community Services, which of course deserves a big shout out from us. Designed, as I say, by students in our environmental science program, this Greenway project, okay, thanks, has received support from folks who were here before, or the representatives were Councilmember Julie Wan, Congresswoman Nydia Velasquez, and of course the Borough President Donna Britzers Jr. But as Joby pointed out, in 2013, Tenzin Druzak was killed when a minivan driver lost control and hit 5 people on that sidewalk on Thompson right by 29th. He was a freshman from Tibet, actually, and a student at the High School of Applied Communication, which is one of the schools on our campus. His case brought attention for the need to improve safety measures, as Joby pointed out, all along Thompson Avenue. And so we are, again, very encouraged by DOT's kind of revitalization of this plan. And we can't afford to wait, for any more fatalities, of course, to occur before this neighborhood street is made safe for everyone. So we support the vision presented by the Department of Transportation. We applaud Community Board 2 and your Transportation Committee for bringing it this far along. And we hope you'll vote to pass a resolution in support of the proposal tonight. And thank you again to the leadership of the board and all of you and the committee chairs and others involved for your advocacy for a safe street for everyone on Thompson Avenue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ken. You have at least 2 former students of LaGuardia here. So, yeah, no, great to see that. And also just a reminder, we only vote on the City of Yes text amendment today. So, but yeah, it's great to voice these concerns. Next is Fanny Chang and then Brandon Castro.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Fanny Chang, and my business is located in the IBC district in Lion City. Can you show this? Oh, okay. Can you please show this? I'd like to invite Board 2, all its members, chairs, and whoever's in this room to this meeting that was posted. It's about the rezoning, okay? So it's on the site, okay? Send it to us, email, or we'll send it to. Oh, I dropped it in there already. I will send it by email too. Second of all, I attended a private meeting in Silver Cups, with a lot of the land stake owners, and there's 2 IBZ zones. in Lion City. One is close by me, and the cross streets are Queens Plaza South and 21st Street and 44th Drive and Vernon Boulevard. The other IBZ zoning is around here from Skillman Avenue to, LaGuardia College, to 39th Street and a little past Newtown Creek, in that area. So zoning should be inclusive, not exclusive. What they have done here in the WXY's presentation is created industrial preference medium, industrial commercial medium high. And what that means is that commercial, you're allowed to have residential also in the zoning code. So they created a moat around my office, which means that they could go up to possibly M1-6, which is 10 FAR, and I won't have any sun. So zoning, once again, should be inclusive. The entire study is supposed to be based on equality. And I think WXY, who's doing this study, should go back to the drawing board because now they're making me exclusive of the blocks. And we should keep the IBD zone. New York City is made up of immigrants, and the immigrants need jobs, they need businesses, and they need places. Once you start replacing this with all residential, it's going to be like Manhattan, it's all for offices, and now they're turning it back to residential. So should we have this in Lion City? Thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope you attend this meeting. Thank you.
Okay, Brennan Castro, and then Leo Gutman. Say anything but vote for me.
Gotcha. Good evening, everybody. This might be some of your first time getting to hear me speak today, but my name is Brandon Castro. I'm a candidate for State Assembly District 30 here in Queens. As you were saying, I'm going to be very, very careful about the campaign. That's fair. That's fair. So I have an event coming up on June 22nd. We're calling it the Quality. Someone else was promoting events, really. Political things. No. So this is hosted by a couple of the organizations, some of the Hispanic communities as well. So on June 22nd, we're hosting a quality of life event. This is not my event. I just happen to be attending too. But this is pertaining to a lot of the issues that are going on with crime, safety, the prostitution that is going on our streets too. These are a lot of things that I feel are not being heard as much and is being very vague whenever it comes to the language and the wording. And we're going to have a couple hundred people show up to show that these are things that are very important to us and that are not being heard. I was speaking to a couple of the families there too, or a couple of people that are also going to be going who've had a lot of experience with this. So if anyone's interested, this is happening Saturday, June 22nd at 1 o'clock. Right by the Jackson Heights Post Office. This is hosted by 85 Cares, a couple of the Elmhurst organizations too. And we're going to be having a couple of media present there too. So if anyone's interested in hearing a balanced form of dialogue too, you are more than welcome to come. And again, Jackson Heights Post Office, Saturday, June 22nd at 1 o'clock. That's about it. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Want to listen to yes.
Also. But
Okay, thanks.
I'll be back for City of Yes, but first, so I'm Leo Gutman. I'm a Long Island City resident. I wanted to speak up today just to express some real anger and disappointment over Governor Hochul's decision to postpone congestion pricing. Seems like she's trying to kill it entirely. We're obviously not in the congestion zone, but I think our district, along with everywhere in covered by the MTA, is a place that can benefit from congestion pricing. The gaps in MTA funding are going to be really hard to fill, and alternative proposals like business taxes on New York City are going to be worse and more aggressive than taxes than the congestion pricing would have been. So I appreciate the comments I've seen from some elected representatives. And I know I saw one from Senator Gonzalez that was strongly in favor of congestion pricing and against Hochul's scheme. But I just wanted to express that I'm someone who was excited for congestion pricing. And if the board was able to make some kind of statement or do anything to support it, I would be really appreciative of that too.
Okay, so that's it for general public comment. Now let's move to our first guest speaker. Oh, that's for doing City of Yes, right? Oh, you want to come now? Okay. Can you, okay, great. But if you wouldn't mind combining the City of Yes comment, or do you want to make a separate comment? All right, you're entitled. Come ahead.
Sorry, I wasn't able to print this out, so I have my. Okay, yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Lisa Gorin, and I'm speaking tonight on behalf of Long Island City Coalition and our sister group, Hunters Point Community Coalition. I'm here to ask Community Board 2 to reject the Department of City Planning's One LIC initiative. One LIC is not a plan. It's merely authorization to upzone a large segment of the community. Rather than outlining ideas for fixing serious problems, it proposes doing, through a rezone or upzone, proposes doing more of what has caused the problems here. LIC is a neighborhood out of balance because of a lack of planning and because of mixed use, quote unquote, zoning green lighted by the DCP that has resulted almost exclusively in hyperdevelopment of luxury residential towers. LIC is third lowest among New York City neighborhoods in per capita open space. It has a serious deficit of services, including school seats and transportation needs. And its very old infrastructure, which is falling apart at the seams, was designed for smaller industrial use, not dense residential. Every new residential high-rise adds to those deficits. Despite, adding a little park here and a little school, another little school, it increases the deficit. Sorry. Most serious and urgent, of course, are the risks from climate change. Hunters Point sits squarely in a flood zone and is at serious risk from storm surge, increasing precipitation, and sea level rise from the hydrodynamics of the East River, which is not a river. It's a tidal strait with currents going in two directions as an extension of the Atlantic Ocean. The neighborhood was submerged beneath more than 6 feet of water during Hurricane Sandy, and it floods now, even in the absence of rain. One LIC doesn't address any of these problems. On the other hand, HPCC has offered a true community plan that aligns with what CB2 has advocated for in the past. It protects I'm almost done. It protects public assets for public use, respects the area's natural environment, outlines detailed 21st century solutions for resiliency, following the city's own recommendations for generous green space and proper setbacks along the waterfront, not a narrow, non-resilient esplanade. It also outlines a host of services and serious support for the IBC, all of which would help grow a more diversified, equitable, and strong neighborhood economy. Our past work improved the original Queens West plans and had a major impact on final plans for Hunters Point South, which is a model of resiliency and has been a win-win for everybody. We welcome an opportunity to discuss our plan with you in detail. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. Update on the Hunters Point Ferry from the EDC.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tara Das, and I'm here with EDC. I'm joined by my colleague, Franny Civitano, the Deputy Director of NYC Ferry, and several of our colleagues from EDC as well. Many of you have attended our public meeting that we hosted a couple weeks ago, which provided a lot more robust information about this project and where we are. But for the sake of time, we are going to provide a more abridged version of that. But if you have any more questions that aren't answered tonight, we have the recording of that meeting, an FAQ document, and all of our public meeting materials on the website linked here. Going to the next slide. The Hunters Point South Ferry Landing is the oldest in the system. While we continue to inspect it and make sure that it's operating safely, we do need to replace it at a certain point in time, which is very imminent. Another thing to note is it does have accessibility limitations. So we do intend on implementing some interventions to make sure that people who use wheelchairs can use the landing more easily, but overall a new landing is needed to have an expanded accessibility options overall. We also want to make sure as we think about replacing this landing to make sure that we are responding to or serving the very high ridership that this landing sees. The exact location that the Hunters Point South Ferry Landing is in does have limitations to implementing a new landing in that area, as Franny will go over shortly. So originally we did propose a new location slightly north, but following feedback we received from the Conservancy, the Community Board, and several members of the public, we went back to the drawing board to take a more expansive look at other alternatives and conduct a lot more engagement. So we hosted a walkthrough with the Community Board, members of the Conservancy, and Council Member 1 in early 2023, and have since been undergoing a robust look at an alternative analysis of the different landing locations proposed, and conducted a 6-week-long survey with tabling public meetings to really expand our outreach on the project and get a more thorough understanding of riders and residents' preferences for locations and their experiences in the park. So I'll pass it to Franny to walk us through those results.
Great. Thank you, Tara. Yes, so we're here today to share with you the conclusion of our alternatives analysis study. So many of you may have taken the survey. We really appreciate if you did that. We're grateful that we got almost 2,000 responses to that survey. Yeah, this slide. So as a reminder, sorry, it's a little clipped here on the screen, but as a reminder, this is the map. Everything in yellow that you see are the locations that we studied. So A was where we originally proposed, which is about 200 feet next to the existing landing along the Esplanade. Option B would be an alternative design in the current location. So as Tara mentioned, or maybe she didn't mention, but I think a lot of you may have heard us say before, there's the Amtrak tunnel that runs right under our current landing. There's a sewer easement. There's the Queens Midtown Tunnel that is slightly to the north. So we're prevented from building modern ferry landings in this area with piles that go down into the riverbed because of the interaction with the tunnel. So option B was looked at as an alternative design that wouldn't have any piles. Option C is right next to the luminescence art area and walking path. And then option D, the most southern part of the park near the outdoor gym. So I'm going to talk next about the results of our survey. So if we go to the next slide, yes, thank you. So we asked folks not only which locations do you prefer, but we also asked about how do you use the park, how do you use the ferry, and how people value and rank importance, different criteria. We heard a lot of feedback when we first had proposed a landing location. So we took that information and we asked folks to say, can you please rank these things from most important to least important so we could get a sense of, where priorities were. So we're glad to see that most people who took the survey were residents, ferry riders, park users, and most said that keeping a landing in this area is important to them. And we also heard that most important to people is not disturbing tranquil areas of the park, minimizing changes to the park, accommodating ridership demand, and then minimizing environmental impact. So next, I'm going to talk about the actual results. And we asked this question, our technical analysis. So in this study, we had our engineers look at the technical side of each of these sites. So can we construct there? Can we permit there? Can we safely and reliably offer service there? And then we asked, folks, 2,000 people responded to tell us where they preferred a landing location. As the technical analysis was ongoing, we had the survey out. And so we asked this question like ranked choice voting. We said, what is your first preferred location? And then we said, if that location is not feasible technically, what is your next preferred location? And so in round one, first people said 64% of respondents said, I want the landing at option B, which is a modified design with the existing landing. And then in the second round, if we say, okay, if option B is not feasible, what is your next preferred location? 52% of folks said option A along the Esplanade would be their preferred location. You can see, and I apologize, I think it might be a little bit difficult to see here, but all of this is available on our website. We'll make sure that that link gets shared. You'll see in both of these situations, option D, which is at the southern end of the park, did not rank highly at all in either scenario. It also had some very challenging limitations in water, and both from the park impact side. So I will not be talking about option D anymore. We're not considering that option further. So if we go to the next slide, we're now going to talk, I'm just going to go through quickly each of the three options and then tell you what our plan is moving forward. So when we were looking at these options and evaluating these different landings, we looked at the technical criteria that our engineers evaluated. And then we also looked at the things that folks ranked in order of importance, and we assigned a low, medium, and high impact there. So I'm going to start with option B because that's the location that came up first in the first round of the community preference survey. So this is an area from the perspective here, we're kind of standing a little bit in the volleyball court and looking out at the water. The concessions area is ahead. You can kind of see the tall overhang of the concessions area, and then the current landing is in the water to the left a little bit there. So what we were really trying to do here is make something work. We knew that this was a preferred location. We've had lots of community conversations about this. People wanted it to stay where it was. We know that that is not possible with a traditional ferry design that has piles in the river that keep the landing held up like that. So we asked our engineers, come up with a way where we could have a ferry landing that does not involve piles. So what they looked at was a truss design, TRUSS, which essentially means that the landing, the barge itself is being held up to the bulkhead or the kind of upland area of the water there. And so there would be two crisscross beams, and two sides connect to the upland and two sides connect to the barge. And that's how the landing is set up. It's a little atypical from how we normally have ferry landings. And so that was slightly concerning, like how is this going to be, held up? But ultimately, that ended up not being the most concerning thing that we found when we really dove into the technical and operational impacts with a landing design like this. Two main things came up that make this design very challenging. The first is that because we can't drive piles in the river, it means that we are not able to put in a guide pile. And if you've been to any of our other landings, you've probably noticed that when the boat docks, there are piles that are on either side of it with a big donut fender around it. And the boat kind of goes in and is able to gently touch that pile and guide in a controlled and slow way into the landing. And then the ramp comes down and people get on and off. So in a landing location like this, where we wouldn't be able to have those piles, we are in kind of an open area of the water that's not protected by the Esplanade or anything else. And as I think someone just said in the last public comment, you've got the East River, not technically a river, yes, but with tides going up and down. Sometimes they stay the same, but most of the times they're going up and down, and it changes frequently. So what you've got is if you've got the landing here and your tide is going up and down or in one direction, you've got a boat that is trying to go into the landing where there's no way to guide it. And the tide is trying to move the boat in the direction that it's not wanting to go. And so to get in there requires a lot of precision, a lot of confidence from a captain, and a lot of power to kind of jam up against the landing there, hold it in place, use a lot of energy and gas, put the ramp down, make sure people can get safely on and off. So this is majorly concerning to us. It is not recommended by our operator as a safe, reliable way to do things. And And it also, we have operated at landings before that have one or two slips like this, and we ultimately had to replace that landing because captains just couldn't use it confidently. So that was the first thing. The second thing with option B is because it's so shallow and we can't put any piles in, which means that those mooring arms kind of, have to be really close to the bulkhead. It means that we have to dredge the river because it's very shallow. So getting all that silt and dirt and stuff up to put the landing in. And then we'd have to dredge, periodically throughout the life of the landing. So we'd have to close the landing, take the barge off, dredge again, make sure we have enough water depth, put the landing back. So there would be these temporary lapses in service. So for mostly for these two reasons, this landing is not feasible. And unfortunately, we are not able to put a landing in the existing spot that we have it. So I'm going to move on to option C, which is the luminescence area. So this is where we looked at, what you're looking at now is, it might be hard to see, but kind of in the middle of the photo is a wooden area. Those are the viewing steps that you can currently sit and, look out. Luminescence is on the right, is kind of the, shrubbery on the right in the water. So in order to build a landing here, we would have to eliminate the viewing steps and build out a long pier, essentially right adjacent alongside luminescence, and then put a ferry landing at the end of it. So technically, operationally, it is feasible. No cross-current berthing, no dredging, no, we know how to operate a ferry in that kind of configuration. The issue here is that on either side of where we would build that pier are newly constructed wetlands that came in when this new part of the park was introduced. But it really seems to have a big impact on the things that we ask people to rank. So disturbing tranquil areas of the park, minimizing changes of the park, and then minimizing environmental impacts because we are in this kind of ecologically sensitive area. That plus this was, the third choice out of 4 in the ranking survey. And so we also did not feel that this was a great option. So that brings us back to option A along the Esplanade. So this is the location that we originally proposed. I think, I will acknowledge we have heard and we have had so many conversations with folks about this location and concerns and questions that people have. So I'm going to jump right into how we are addressing those because it is our recommended alternative. We do intend to move forward with option A to replace this landing because we do want to keep a ferry landing in Hunters Point South Park. We don't want to discontinue service. So if we go to the design changes, I know we're pressed for time and I want to be respectful of that. So yes, on the left here, we have our design as originally proposed. So it looks similar to the picture on the right, but I just want to explain a few things here. So one, the first thing we heard when we proposed this location was the views are going to be impacted. Lots of people come to this park for the views. So we would propose this landing without a canopy to minimize that impact. The second thing is we have worked with our engineers to push the landing as far as possible that we can with our regulators, that there's kind of, it might be hard to see, but there's a diagonal dotted line kind of in the middle of the river there. That's the start of the federal navigation channel in which you are not allowed to construct or have, ongoing operations stop in the middle of. So we've pushed it out as far as possible, which is a benefit to air quality. Also, the further away things are, the smaller they look. So that is going to be a benefit. We'll work with parks and stakeholders here at the Conservancy to figure out where the best place is for the benches that are there. In case people, don't want to sit in front of the ferry landing, we could relocate those to another place. The biggest thing here that I think, maybe new information for some folks here, unless you came to our public meeting, is that this issue of queuing. So we've heard a lot that this is a busy location. It's a busy esplanade. Adding a ferry queue is, would be impactful to that. So we've worked with our engineers to come up with a plan to build a 10-foot wide platform off the front of the esplanade there. And then move the entry gate to the far south of the esplanade so that we can queue the bulk of people who might be waiting for a ferry off the esplanade. They will still be standing there because they have to get on the boat, but they won't be in the space of, people who are walking or running or whatever they're doing. And then lastly is there are a few steps that are kind of near the existing landing and also the concessionaire. So we would make those a ramp so that to get to the landing and the esplanade, both from the south and from the north, is accessible for everyone. My last thing is just to say here on next steps is our design iterations are ongoing with the things that I've talked about here. We want to get those into a design. We're completing our environmental review, which we anticipate to be done by the end of the year. And then we are hoping to start construction in summer of 2025, so next year, with an anticipated completion date and this landing in service by the end of next year. Then we would decommission the old one and have this new landing that can last for a long time.
Awesome.
So yes, invite any questions.
Thank you so much. Folks, remember, we do not vote on this today, and there are many ways to provide your opinion and your comment. We have 2 more presentations to get through. I'm limiting it to just 3 questions. So Steve, who else? Steve, Camille, and Tom. All right, that's it.
Steve.
Yeah, it seems great that you've come to us several times. If you study this and come back with the same solution you came back with the first time, slightly altered, makes us feel like community input's really working. A couple of questions, maybe to put it in context. What is the daily usage of that ferry landing now?
Nina, do you know? It's about 700 a day.
And was it about 17,000 daily usage with residents and park goers?
I don't know the daily usage
Yeah,
of the park.
it's something like that. So it's about 1,000 to 1. Secondly, you're talking about technology with the alternate plan for B that you had that is not standard technology, but you're using standard ferry boats as compared to using hydrofoils or other boats that could dock in shallow water. And perhaps, just as somebody said earlier, I think it was our council person about lifeguard training, maybe we should have captain training, because there are people who know how to dock boats on the East River. I've done it many times. True, not a ferry. But then again, I'm not a licensed captain. So again, I think this community board, and certainly the community board, would ask you not to just go forward and do what you want to do all along, but to serve the community and not the 700 people.
Thank you for your feedback.
Hi, just want to express my disappointment in this process and irritation as somebody who spent time taking the survey. I wish that you had done the feasibility study before you asked people to take the time, because it looks like the options that people wanted were not actually feasible. So I think that was a real error in terms of how you went about this process. In addition, I didn't particularly appreciate the presentation. I felt like I was sitting here in suspense as to where you were going. So a recommendation for the future is just get to the point faster. The question I have for you is, and I don't mean that snarkily, but I didn't know where this was going. And the question is, where will that, I see the river, I see Queens, I see LIC. What is that blocking? Is it right in front of like the Empire State Building? Because I think as many people have mentioned, that area is beautiful for sitting and taking in the view, and what's on the other side of the river?
I don't know. I don't remember exactly what is right there. But as I said, the canopy will not be there. And also if you're on the concessions area, which is an elevated area, like that will have a clear sight line to the city, where we're going to relocate the benches. It's, I think, 90 feet wide, our landings. So that's really, you know, what we're talking about. Got it. The comment was show the whole scene. I think we've just been looking at new rendering, so we'll try to see that the full view is there.
Thank you. One of the original concerns, and I didn't hear it addressed here tonight, and forgive me if it was addressed, was the emissions from the ferries and the pollution. In particular for it being adjacent to the field where many people engage in activities, especially our children. And in my reading, ferries contribute 100 times more pollution than a vehicle. The nitrous oxides is sometimes 1,000 more times. So was that addressed and I missed it, or how are we addressing the pollution in particular being so near the park? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. So a few things. One, we don't intend with this new ferry relocation to change the current service. So the ferry landing that exists right now at the side of the Esplanade there, we anticipate roughly the same amount of service, although this landing does give us flexibility to reduce service by using larger vessels, so that's a possibility. But we have pushed it out as far as we are able to, so that's farther away from the Esplanade. The boats would be further away from the Esplanade than they are currently. And then, you know, big picture, I don't have an announcement here to be made yet, but we are aggressively and actively looking at our short and long-term strategy to reduce emissions everywhere. So that's things we can do in the short term, and then long-term, how do we reduce emissions and decarbonize the fleet? Thank you very much.
Moving right along, Queens DOT on the Queens Boulevard Phase 6 Street Improvement Project. And again, just three, we do not vote on this, and we have two more presentations to get through, 3 questions each. Let's be respectful of all our times, and let's get to attendance by 9:30.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Joe Patty. I'm the Borough Planner for Western Queens at DOT. Tonight, we're going to be showing you Phase 6 of our Queens Boulevard Street Improvement Project. I just wanted to give a quick background. We just hit our 10-year mark for our Vision Zero initiative. That's our agency's goal for getting, thank you. Yeah, that's our agency's goals for getting traffic fatalities down to zero citywide. And at the beginning of this initiative is when we started our street improvement projects for Queens Boulevard. It's when we started just east of Roosevelt Avenue. We continued, just east of Roosevelt Avenue. We continued east all the way to Hillside Avenue. And now we're returning back to the community where it all started to provide what I call the capstone of that project from Skillman Avenue to Roosevelt Avenue. This is a very large stretch of Queens Boulevard, and we've had numerous traffic accidents, fatalities on this area, and we wanted to show you our designs for this project. I'm joined here by our research, implementation, and safety group. Ben Schweid is going to be presenting our project. Take it away, Ben.
All right, thanks, Joe. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me. Just put that over. That's okay. Great. So my name is Ben Schweid. I'm the Assistant Director with DOT's Research, Implementation, and Safety Group. I'm here to just go through our proposal today for Queens Boulevard. As Joe mentioned, about a decade ago, we came to this board to present the first phase of Queens Boulevard as one of the initial big projects of Vision Zero. This board supported that work back then. It was a really kind of precedent-setting vote. And we've seen that in the decades since we started doing that work on Queens Boulevard, we've had really impressive safety gains. Since comparing the times before the project to our most recent 3-year period, We've seen about I believe it's a 68% reduction in fatalities on Queens Boulevard, reductions in injuries for everybody, and a doubling and tripling of cyclist volumes along the corridor. So the vote that this board took about a decade ago is really precedent setting to leading to really transformative changes and saving lives on Queens Boulevard. So with that, I'm going to kind of go into our presentation tonight. I want to thank you all for having us. Thank you to the Transportation Committee for the letter of support that was issued after our presentation there. So, and I'll try to go a little bit faster tonight to be cognizant of time. So today we're talking about a mile-long stretch of Queens Boulevard between Skillman Avenue and Roosevelt Avenue, kind of right through the heart of Sunnyside, connecting to Long Island City, Queens Plaza and the Queensboro Bridge, and then towards Woodside on the east. Just some brief background here. There are a lot of buses that run on this portion of Queens Boulevard, both the two local buses, the Q60 and the Q32, and numerous express buses. Queens Boulevard here is a through truck route, which just means that it is one of the streets that is designated for east-west truck travel in this part of Queens. And as you all know, it's a busy and vital commercial corridor. It's a little more commercial on the eastern half, a little bit more industrial on the western half. And of course, the 7 train goes right down the middle on top of Queens Boulevard here. Vision Zero is an initiative that New York City started a decade ago to try to eliminate fatalities and severe injuries on our streets. It's a constant work in progress. And last year, DOT released our new Vision Zero priority geographies, identifying the streets with the highest rates of pedestrian severe injuries citywide. Though we've made really important safety gains on Queens Boulevard, it's still a Vision Zero priority corridor due to the about 4.1 pedestrian KSI that's killed or severely injured per mile along the corridor. It's also within a priority area due to the high rates of pedestrian fatalities and severe injuries in the kind of Sunnyside area. So digging into the data on this portion a little bit more specifically, we've seen just over 350 people have been injured on this portion of Queens Boulevard. That's a really shockingly high amount of people that have been injured on just a mile of road. And of those 350 injuries, 11 of those have been severe injuries. Those are life-altering injuries to people on the street. So that's really the goal. The reason that we're here today is to make the street safer. When we start doing these projects, we like to look into how people are getting injured on the street, understand not just the numbers, but what's causing these injuries. And when we look at the injury data on Queens Boulevard, we see that the most common cause of injuries for pedestrians are caused by drivers making left turns onto Queens Boulevard and failing to yield to pedestrians who are in the crosswalk. So this is drivers coming off of the side streets, going underneath this and through the 7 train, under the 7 train, and then making a left turn. And that movement is the single most dangerous movement for pedestrians on the street. When we look at how drivers are getting injured on the street, we see that there's a really high rate of rear end crashes, which is really indicative of speeding. We also see that side swipe crashes are common as people are driving fast and swerving. And that's kind of the indicative of how people are often driving on this street. It's also just worth contextualizing this. This portion of Queens Boulevard has just under 10 fatalities or KSI per mile. So it's that rate of this mile-long stretch puts it in the top 10% most dangerous streets anywhere in Queens. So as I mentioned, about starting in 2015 and continuing through last year, DOT has been doing this transformative project on Queens Boulevard, starting at Roosevelt Avenue and now extending all the way down to Hillside Avenue. Those redesigns from Roosevelt Avenue to Union Turnpike look pretty consistent and then a little bit different once you get east of Union Turnpike. But they all added a protected bike lane, expanding pedestrian space, and really had this focus on slowing turning vehicles. What's really transformative are these safety numbers at the bottom of this screen here. For everybody using the roadway, there have been a 68% reduction in fatalities on Queens Boulevard. Queens Boulevard famously was referred to as the Boulevard of Death before we started this project due to the staggeringly high numbers of people killed on the street. And we see that though we still have work to do, we've made really substantial progress in making the street safer for everybody. There have been a 34% reduction in injuries on overall, a slightly larger 42% reduction in pedestrian injuries, and our cyclist volumes on the corridor, depending on where you count and specifically, have more than doubled and have more than tripled in certain locations along Queens Boulevard. And with the expansion of City Bike further east, we expect those numbers to continue to rise. So on Queens Boulevard currently, both in this portion, Queens Boulevard between Van Dam Street and Roosevelt Avenue is two 50-foot wide roadways in each direction with a 7-train and parking lots running in the middle. Each direction has 4 full-time travel lanes and a 5th lane that is a combination of a parking lane or sometimes used as a rush hour travel lane. Though, as I'm sure many of you are aware, that rush hour travel lane is often unusable due to one stopped car or an open restaurant, anything in there kind of stops it from being used as a 5th travel lane. For pedestrians, we have really long crossing distances at these intersections, and there's no space for cyclists along the roadway. We see that there are really heavy pedestrian volumes on Queens Boulevard, especially in the eastern half of the corridor. And to get across Queens Boulevard, it's a really long crossing distance for pedestrians. These large wide intersections mean that drivers can take these fast turns onto Queens Boulevard, really endangering pedestrians who are crossing the street. Like I mentioned earlier, these fail to yield left turns are the most frequent cause of injuries to pedestrians on the corridor, and something that we're really looking to address today with this proposal. There also are almost all intersections do have leading pedestrian intervals already, which is where pedestrians can start crossing before the traffic moves. For cyclists, we see that this is already a busy stretch for bikers, whether it's people commuting into the city, whether it's delivery cyclists. We counted over 300 daily cyclists on Queens Boulevard already. Those are much higher numbers than where we had east of Roosevelt Avenue when we started this work a decade ago. So we're seeing lots of bikers already using Queens Boulevard. But there's no dedicated space for them. So it leads to cyclists sharing the travel lanes with the fast moving buses, trucks, and vehicles having to deal with double parked cars, just like any driver on Queens Boulevard does, kind of swerving in and out. For drivers, we see that especially during the off-peak hours, Queens Boulevard has a lot of excess capacity. There are 4 to 5 travel lanes on Queens Boulevard, so especially when you're not talking about the rush hour times, the wide open street can really easily and quickly lead to speeding. And this aggressive driving leads to these high rates. This fast driving leads to these high rates of rear end crashes and these right angle or T-bone crashes at intersections. And again, the kind of width of this roadway just allows all these movements to happen at higher, less safe speeds. So when people are making these turns onto or off of Queens Boulevard or just driving, they can make them at high rates of speed. DOT, before we embark on this project, we sent our street ambassador team out onto Queens Boulevard to survey businesses to understand their loading and delivery patterns so that we can make sure that when we implement changes to the street, it works for the businesses. Our street ambassador spoke to 59 businesses on Queens Boulevard about their loading patterns and needs, and we're continuing to have conversations with the Business Improvement District as well. And we learned some information about how they get their deliveries, when they get them, what vehicles they use. And we'll use that information, especially the kind of understanding where and when people are getting deliveries to help tailor the loading plans and the curbside regulations that we'll implement. Our street ambassador teams, as well as other outreach efforts with the board, with elected officials, also spoke to or had about 300 people complete surveys about their perception of safety along Queens Boulevard. Most respondents, the majority of people said they felt unsafe from traffic when they were crossing Queens Boulevard. So you're kind of seeing that the perception of that safety issue matches what the data is showing. The most commonly expressed concerns about traffic safety were speeding vehicles and vehicles failing to yield. We asked people about changes that they wanted to see. The most requested things were protected bike lanes or bus lanes. Respondents also, we ask about trade-offs when we ask these conversations. Unfortunately, we can't just give everything without taking away something from the street. We have limited space. So people most frequently identified removing either curbside parking or moving lanes as acceptable trade-offs for these safety improvements. So with that, our proposal for this corridor of Queens Boulevard, we're proposing to remove a travel lane from Queens Boulevard and eliminate those rush hour regulations in each direction to really encourage safer driving speeds along the entirety of the corridor and right size it for the amount of vehicles that are using the street. With the removal of that extra travel lane, we'd be adding a curbside bike lane that'll be protected with our floating parking lane to provide a safe connection for cyclists, as well as help organize the roadway and bring it kind of more predictability to it. And with the protected bike lane, we'll be adding pedestrian islands at all feasible locations. And those are going to really shorten these crossing distances and encourage slower, safer turns, making the street much safer for pedestrians as well. So when we talk about protected bike lanes in the city here, they're often thought of as this is a benefit for cyclists, and that is true. It is a benefit for cyclists and makes it safer and more comfortable for them. But we also see that protected bike lanes are one of the most effective safety treatments that we have for all roadway users in the city. And that's because what protected bike lanes do is they organize the roadway, they make it more predictable, and they allow us to install treatments like pedestrian islands, like turn calming. That means that we're shortening crossing distances, that we're slowing turns onto and off the street, that we're reducing speeding on the street. So where we see protected bike lanes, it's not just talking about bikes, it's talking about safety for everybody. And so we've seen citywide where we've installed bike lanes, there have been substantial injury reductions and even larger reductions in fatalities and severe injuries on these corridors. And when you look at these numbers for all users, they're about at 15%. When you look at these numbers for senior pedestrians, who are among our most vulnerable users on the roadway, we see that these numbers jump substantially, about a 22% reduction in injuries, and then nearly a 40% reduction in senior pedestrian fatalities and severe injuries on streets with protected bike lanes. So we really like protected bike lanes as a really effective safety treatment, making the streets safer for all of our users. A little bit about what this will look like, and I imagine if in the back this might be a little bit hard to see. This presentation is online. The presentation we gave to the Transportation Committee, which has the same graphics, is already online. This will be online tomorrow if you want to take a closer look. But this is kind of looking at the western part of the corridor from 32nd Place to 35th Street. And just a couple of things to note: in the eastbound direction, we'll be starting the standard protected bike lane between 32nd Place and 33rd Street. At all intersections as feasible, we'll be installing painted pedestrian islands to shorten these crossing distances, and also to put in our protected intersection designs, which will slow these turns across the bike lanes and across the crosswalks, ensuring that drivers are yielding to both cyclists and to pedestrians on the street. Where we have bus stops, the buses will be able to pull to the curb to continue getting passengers on and off. And also just a note, at 34th Street, we'll be extending those median tips underneath the 7 train where the stairs come down to provide more space to people coming on or off the 7 train there. Just another visual to show a few extra elements here. Where we're doing this bike lane, we'll make sure we're maintaining all driveway access to all businesses that have driveways on the corridor with safe turns across the bike lane. But we'll be installing these pedestrian islands to really narrow Queens Boulevard and really encourage people to take the turns onto Queens Boulevard at these slower and safer speeds, yielding, especially when they're making these left turns, which we've seen are the most dangerous movements for pedestrians. We're also looking to install some of these islands. Some of them will be in paint, and we're looking to also be able to do as many of them in concrete as we can to kind of solidify those safety improvements, make them more robust. We're still figuring out the exact details of which intersections we'll get that now, but we're looking to do as many of these painted pedestrian refuge islands in concrete as feasible. So the protected bike lane, like I mentioned, is going to be a really significant pedestrian safety improvement along the corridor. The crossing distances to get across a roadway on Queens Boulevard will be reduced from about 50 feet to about 31 to 33 feet. So that's a substantially shorter crossing distance. And 34 out of 35 crosswalks will be shortened on at least one side. So it's really going to be throughout the entirety of the corridor, we'll be having these shorter crossing distances. We'll be increasing everywhere as feasible the leading pedestrian interval time by additional 3 seconds or so to give pedestrians a larger head start when they're crossing the street, to make that both have a shorter crossing distance and more of a head start when you're crossing. And again, we're really focusing on slowing down these turns. So these left turns that I've mentioned are the highest crash movements for all pedestrians. And this design really focuses on slowing down these turns and encouraging them to still be made totally feasibly and not in a challenging manner, but at a safer speed so that drivers are yielding to pedestrians when they're turning. The protected bike lane and the fact that we bring the parking off of the curb. So the parking is what we call our floating parking, as you've seen on other protected bike lanes and they're around here, will narrow the receiving lanes. So when drivers are turning onto Queens Boulevard, they have a narrower area to aim for. It just makes the street a little bit tighter. It means that you can't take that speed turn quite as fast. When we model this on our software from trucks making these turns, it means the maximum speed that a truck can make that turn at now is 15 miles an hour. It reduces down to 9 miles an hour with this design. So it's substantially slower, but still totally feasible. This design also makes safer these turns off of Queens Boulevard by including elements like delineators or rubber speed bumps, things like that. Those will help ensure that when people are making right turns across the bike lane onto the side streets, they're just yielding and making those turns safely. For cyclists, a protected bike lane is going to be a separated safe bike lane connecting directly to the existing Queens Boulevard bike lanes just east of Roosevelt. We'll be, without taking up additional space, we'll be providing new wider bike lanes, our new kind of standard treatments, which allows for both different speed bikes if they're e-bikes using the street now, but also for social cycling. If you're riding with a friend, there's more space to ride side by side. The protected intersection design, you can see an example of what that looks like in the top photo here. Will improve this yielding to cyclists. And we're also looking to improve bike connections in the future into Long Island City. So with that, just mentioning how this will connect in the bike network. This will connect directly on the eastern edge to the existing Queens Boulevard protected bike lanes going east from Roosevelt Avenue. And then on the western edge, we're still finalizing the exactly what this is going to look like. There's a few tricky things to work out, but this will have connections to Queens Plaza, as well as studying the connections on Thompson Avenue. On Thompson Avenue, this is kind of a very preliminary concept at this point in time, but we're still investigating the feasibility of this, but our initial thoughts are to kind of provide both a bike connection and a safety improvement on Thompson Avenue in front of LaGuardia College. We're looking into removing a travel lane on Thompson Ave and adding both a sidewalk extension on the south curb in front of the community college and a bike connection on the north curb to be able to bring cyclists directly into Long Island City. The two-way path, the two-way potential bike path on the north curb of Thompson Avenue would connect directly to existing bike lanes in Long Island City. And the and Thompson Ave and the north side of Skillman Avenue are free from turning conflicts, which mean that it would be safer for cyclists on Thompson Avenue. So this is still very much an initial concept, but it's something that we're continuing to study and hope to have an update for you either later this year or early next year. Back to Queens Boulevard, just the last couple of slides. This proposal will removing one of the travel lanes on Queens Boulevard is going to help to discourage speeding on the corridor without increasing congestion. So making it safer for drivers too, by reducing these crashes that we see happening on the corridor. Queens Boulevard, we do extensive traffic analysis and we see that Queens Boulevard can function with the current volumes with 3 travel lanes. We'll also be adding truck loading zones to help reduce double parking and make it so that trucks have places to park when they're making deliveries without resulting in cars having to swerve around double parked trucks as frequently. And the protected bike lane is also a safety improvement for drivers because it organizes the roadway, right? It means if you're driving, you no longer have to be interacting with cyclists on the roadway. The cyclists are on their own space and you're in your own space. Lastly, just the kind of curbside improvements that we're looking to implement with this. We're hoping to kind of pursue a comprehensive curb management strategy on Queens Boulevard that's both informed by our merchant survey, conversations, and observations that we've been doing on the street to install loading zones on Queens Boulevard to minimize that double parking, like I was saying, particularly in the eastern half where we see it happening more frequently. At this point, we're planning on maintaining the parking regulations underneath the 7 train for people who are driving to Queens Boulevard to access the businesses or shops or friends or whatever you may be driving there for. And also worth noting with the removal of the rush hour regulations on all curbs where there is parking, you'll be able to park all day there. You won't have to move your car either from 7 to 10 a.m. in the westbound direction or 4 to 7 p.m. in the eastbound direction. And though we don't have any proposed changes to meter regulations yet, that's something that we're continuing to look into. So I'll summarize this. I know we have another presentation tonight. The protected bike lane will add 2 miles of a safe bike connection through the heart of Sunnyside, shortening pedestrian crossing distances and reducing conflicts for pedestrians, drivers, and cyclists, really focusing on slowing and encouraging slower and safer turns onto Queens Boulevard, making those crossing of the boulevard safer for everybody. And making it kind of encouraging people to drive at slower and safer speeds, but still allow them to get where they're going to. And then just to wrap up, I think it's just worth, again, this is a pretty monumental project for New York City DOT. This will pretty much complete safety improvements end to end on Queens Boulevard. 10 years ago, this was referred to as the Boulevard of Death. After this project goes forward, this will be really transforming Queens Boulevard into a multimodal boulevard for 7 miles from the length of it from Queens Plaza all the way down to Hillside Avenue, really making it a street that works for everybody in Queens. So with that, thank you so much for your time and your attention.
Thank you. Only 3 questions. Sorry, we also have a public comment. Fanny Chang still here? No? Okay. Lizzie Ramon. And 3 questions from people who haven't gone yet. Okay. Lisa, Ramit, Leticia. Wait, not yet.
Hi, good evening. You have seen the data and the photos on the screen of bike lane on Queens Boulevard. And I'm proud to and happy and also sad to add a face to all those data and photos. This is my son, Asif Rahman, and I'm his mother, Lizzie Rahman. And Asif was killed on Queens Boulevard 16 years ago in 2008 by, as he mentioned, a truck double parked, which was unloading goods at a furniture store not too far from here. And my son was riding his bicycle. He tried to go around that double parked truck, and then another truck, a Freightliner, came from back and hit him on the back wheel, and he fell down and he lost his life right away. And after his death, I went to Queens Boulevard after his burial, in fact. So I wanted to see the spot where he breathed last. And when I went there, I was looking around and I was surprised, shocked to see that there were no bike lanes on Queens Boulevard, because whenever I expressed my concern for riding a bicycle on these dangerous roads, my son, Asif, he assured me, he told me, Mom, don't worry, there are bike lanes everywhere. That's the reason, I was kind of relaxed that he would be safe on the roads. But when I saw there were no bike lanes on Queens Boulevard, I thought if there were bike lanes on Queens Boulevard, maybe my son's life would be saved. He was a young man and he was only 22 years old at that time. And he would be 39 in this year. And his friend, Anatol, he's a friend of my son. And he has a family, and his other friends, they have a family. But I will never see my son's family or my son. So anyway, my son was gone, but I didn't want any other mother to go through this pain of losing a loved one, a child. So I promised at that point, right there on Queens Boulevard, I have to get a bike lane on Queens Boulevard no matter what. I didn't know how I would get it, but I tried. I got support from public, from organizations, different organizations, and we pushed. And when Mayor de Blasio came to power, he introduced Vision Zero, and under Vision Zero, we got a push. And in 2015, they started work on Queens Boulevard. After the first phase of work was done in Elmhurst, Elmhurst, and right after that, I was awarded as the Activist of the Year, and people came to me, unknown people told me, expressed their gratitude, and they told me that they felt so safe and so happy on riding the bike lane, only in first phase. And then Queens Boulevard was named as Boulevard of Hope or Boulevard of Life from Boulevard of Death, right after the first phase of work, redesigning was done. So in my hope, if the rest of the Queens Boulevard has bike lane, as you have seen on the screen, all the data, life will be saved. Because it's not only Queens Boulevard, all around the city, all around the country, they are using this model of Vision Zero redesigning to save lives. So I hope you all will support the bike lane and make sure that they are everywhere in Queens and USA. Thank you.
Lizianti, I never thought I'd be up here reliving, Asif's memories. He would have won like 5 Grammys by now. He was so talented. And yeah, I'm the same age, but I'm here. He's not. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, 3 questions. Lisa, Pramit, and Leticia, and that's it.
Hello. I have a question for you about signalization. So as a pedestrian, I'm well beyond the age of, riding my bicycle into Manhattan from Sunnyside. Not going to happen. It's hard enough for me even to climb the stairs to get to the subway. I use buses. So as a pedestrian crossing that street, it adds a level of complexity to crossing that street that doesn't make me feel safe. I see it on 2nd Avenue. I see it in Manhattan. Bicycles are just running through lights. They don't stop. There is no signalization. It's only near NYU Hospital. Is there signalization over there where it stops the bicycles? As a pedestrian, you can cross the street and you don't have to worry that you have to look, both ways for bicycles that are going the right way and the wrong way on the bike lane. So I really want to urge you to add signalization to these streets in Sunnyside Gardens that is highly, it's very pedestrian oriented. So I would appreciate that. Thank you. So can you comment on that, both for the turn signals and for the bicycles?
Yeah, so thank you for that comment and that feedback. So we, bikes are in general required to obey the traffic signals. We know, just like pedestrians and drivers, many cyclists also don't do that. Everyone in the city goes when they want to go. We can look into adding signals as much as possible. It will probably, but I don't know whether I don't know whether there'll be an immediately, but point taken, and we can continue to look to see whether we can add those as much as possible.
Yeah, that's not a huge comparison. The way bikes don't flash for lights and cars don't flash, that's not.
No, but I understand the point, and your point is well taken, so I hear you, and we'll look to add signalization. I don't have an answer on that now, but we can look into whether we can get more bike signals as well.
Hey, yeah, thanks for the presentation. Really appreciate it. It looks like from all the data you have for previous redesigns that this one's also going to dramatically enhance safety along the corridor. So really looking forward to that. Seems like it's pretty thoughtful redesign that'll hopefully help, vulnerable street users like us have had been. I have a question around the pedestrian islands that you have.
Yeah.
Why can't all of them be concrete? Why is there a reason that some of them have to be painted? It seems like that's just asking for trouble.
Yeah, so it's a two-part answer. So one is just resources. We don't have the resources to do everything in concrete and at the same time. We are hoping to do as much in concrete as we can both this year and kind of what we can't get done this year, continue to come back in the next year or two to do as many of them in concrete as feasible. The other thing is there are just a couple of locations where there are issues with conflicts with utilities, drainage concerns that mean that putting new concrete in the roadway isn't feasible at specific intersections. But most of it is just it's resources and getting there kind of as soon as we can. But yeah.
Hi, so this is great. I don't know how to ride a bike, but go bike lanes. This is kind of related, not related, but the crossing walk by Joe Saba's Park. I don't know if you guys can extend the time to cross there. And similarly to what the lady said over there, the bikes there really rush through that light, and it's already like a very wide crosswalk. So I don't know if you can extend it. Lots of old people cross the street there, and it's scary. So do something about it, please.
We can for sure look into that. And
Thank you, everyone. If you have opinions, please do email the office, email Debbie. We will get, or your written testimony over to DOT about this. But thank you for the presentation. I'm sorry. I don't think Jason, we're not going to be voting on this, right? This does not come to. Yeah, this was just for our information. This doesn't come to a vote. No. All right. Last but not least, City of Yes.
Hi, everybody. As a reminder, my name is Katie Crawford, and I am a borough planner from the Queens Borough Office. So last time I was here, I did a very lengthy presentation on CHO for you all. Today, I am just going to go through the very top lines of each thing, just so we remember, what exactly we're discussing. But my goal is to be kind of as brief as possible, and then we'll have time for Q&A. I have Winnie here to help answer questions. So basically, there are sort of four main categories of the proposal: low density, medium and high density, citywide proposals, and then sort of like miscellaneous catch-all. So first are the low density proposals. So these apply only in R1 through R5 areas. And the first is town center zoning. So this one will legalize buildings with ground floor commercial use and a few stories of housing above in R1 to R5 zoning districts with a commercial overlay. Next is transit-oriented development. This permits residential buildings when certain conditions are met. The conditions are: must be located within a half mile of transit, lots over 5,000 square feet, and located on a wide street or the short end of a block. The building heights are tied to the underlying zoning, range basically between 3 and 5 stories. Next are ADUs. One ADU would be permitted for 1 or 2 family homes. and these are limited to 800 square feet in size. There are lots of other stipulations that apply to most of these. Just want to remind you, these are just the top ones. Next is district fixes. Today, there are many homes that are out of compliance with the actual zoning rules. These fixes would bring those homes into compliance and allow the zoning to better match what's already on the ground. Basically, this just allows homeowners more flexibility to adapt their homes over time. Next is the medium and high density proposal. This only applies in residential districts zone R6 to R10. So that's the Universal Affordability Preference, or UAP, that permits buildings to have a roughly 20% increase in FAR when affordable or supportive housing is provided. Next are the citywide proposals. So these apply to all residential development. The first is to lift parking mandates. Parking requirements will be optional for residential developments. This is aimed to ultimately reduce the cost of developing new housing. Next is converting non-residential buildings to housing. Changes in our conversion regulations will make it easier for older vacant offices and other non-residential buildings to be converted into housing. Next is small and shared housing. In zoning, the dwelling unit factor regulates the average size of a unit. Other things like the building code also regulate the average size of units. This proposal would remove the dwelling unit factor for areas that have good access to transit to enable more types of housing. Next is campus infill. This would allow campuses such as NYCHA properties or houses of worship to follow height limited infill development. This also applies on irregularly shaped lots. Lastly, the miscellaneous proposals. So we're proposing new zoning districts. CHO would establish 2 new medium density contextual districts. Those would be the R62 and R6D districts, which fill in gaps in our existing zoning. CHO is not mapping these anywhere. It's basically just writing them into the code itself, but they are not being proposed in any part of the city with this proposal. CHO also proposes the creation of 2 new high density districts, the R11 and R12, which will allow for densities above 12 FAR. 12 FAR is currently the cap. Again, CHO is not mapping these, we're just writing them into the code. Next is mandatory inclusionary housing option 3. Currently, MIH option 3 can only be mapped when option 1 or option 2 are also mapped. This update would allow for option 3 to be mapped on its own, which would require a 20% set aside of income restricted units for households earning 40% AMI. Next is the sliver law. The sliver law regulates the height of buildings on narrow lots. CHO proposes to allow these heights to be controlled by the underlying zoning district when they are located within a contextual district. If they're not located in a contextual district, developers may choose the contextual option. If that option is not selected, the sliver law heights apply. Next is quality housing amenity changes. For quality housing developments, we require that a minimum of 3% of the total floor area be used for residential amenity space. This update would require all multifamily buildings to follow this requirement. Next is landmark transfer development rights. This would make it easier for landmarks to sell unused development rights by expanding the transfer radius and simplifying the procedure. LPC review processes and receiving site rules are still going to remain in place. And lastly, railroad right-of-way. The proposal would simplify railroad right-of-way applications and make it an authorization for larger sites over 4 acres and a chair cert for smaller sites. Relevant transit authority would need to sign off on the proposal as well, and it does not affect the construction of new rail lines or adaptive use of existing rail lines. So that is the most brief version of the proposal, and we have time for Q&A.
I'll be easy. 5 questions this time. All right. Danielle, then Tom.
I would like to make a comment. This is Kat.
Okay, Kat, you're third. Dr. Tom.
Thank you. Thank you. I pretty much said what I said at the land use meeting. But my question remains, well, I have many questions, but my main question remains about infill on campuses. if the infill is on public housing or public land, will that infill make that land privatized? And will that, whatever's built there, could it be market rate?
Thanks for your question. So if there is a campus project on a NYCHA campus, it doesn't change, like the zoning text updates we're talking about today doesn't change the existing ownership of any parcel of land. NYCHA land will still remain in ownership of NYCHA. It'll still be public. As for what kind of infill development might happen there, I just want to underscore that any project that happens on a NYCHA site will still have to go through their resident engagement process and receive resident approval before they can move forward with their infill development. And historically, any infill project that has taken place on most NYCHA campuses have been 100% affordable or 100% affordable and senior housing. So given that track record, we think moving forward, NYCHA campuses, given these zoning updates, might be able to pursue infill projects, and likely those will also be affordable.
Thank you. My question is, why does the City of Yes Housing Opportunity Plan not address the manufacturing zoned areas of New York City who have already experienced significant densification of residents these last few years? The Blissville section of Long Island City, for example, doubled our population. And despite the increase in population, we have not seen supportive investments for open green space, public transportation, infrastructure, and services. Those living in manufacturing zoned areas should not be left behind. I call upon the City of New York to address this inequality. I dare to say the densification we have experienced in Blissville is far more than what is planned today in the future for our community. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So for housing opportunity, as you mentioned, it doesn't affect our M districts. It's primarily just for residential districts and residential district equivalents. So it doesn't address the problem you're highlighting there. Though I will say, as part of this citywide text amendment process, we do have to do an environmental review. And as part of that, we've identified areas where we think housing opportunity might create an impact. And one of the areas is open space. So I think it's created an opportunity to work with our capital agencies, like the Parks Department, as well as DOT and other capital agencies, to talk about what mitigation strategies we can put forward to address those areas.
It's sad to hear, considering City of New York placed our unhoused or migrants in manufacturing zoned areas only that do not have the services. This was an opportunity for the City of New York to correct what has occurred the last 6 years. So I'm very saddened to hear your response. Thank you.
All right, go ahead.
Wasn't I next?
Oh, wait, sorry, Kat was.
I just had a comment on Tom's question. Okay. Tom, I think if I'm not mistaken, what happened in Blissville was the construction of hotels, which then became residential when essentially when they were taken over as shelters. And I believe that that the opportunity to build hotels, or the allowing hotels to be built in manufacturing districts, is no longer as of right. Isn't that correct? So.
Kat was next. Kat, then Michael, then Steve.
Thank you. Thank you. First, when people talk, if you could use the microphone, that would be super helpful, because sometimes I can't hear. And then I was curious about the conversion of office space to rental space or to housing space. I understand that one of the biggest challenges with that is that there's not the required light or the required windows. And so in cases where this has been done before, they've had to core out the commercial building so that there would be more windows that that would meet the codes that are required. And so I'm just curious, like how this is planned to be done when that is an extremely expensive option.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think the zoning text amendment that we're talking about today for what we're doing for conversions is that, as you highlighted, conversion, I'm talking this way as if you can see me, but conversion projects are limited to a very small geographic area. So like this isn't directly addressing the high costs that will likely need to happen in order to convert a non-residential building to residential, but is addressing the applicability of being able to convert non-residential buildings to residential. So for instance, under today's zoning, you can only do these conversion projects in certain parts of Manhattan and parts of Queens and Brooklyn, and for buildings that are built before 1961. So we're expanding that to anywhere that allows residential use, as well as buildings that are built more recently before 1991. So because there's a wider radius, that means there are more projects that are able to take on this expensive task of actually converting to residential. As a separate initiative from the City of Yes for housing opportunity, there's also a task force devoted to help interested owners of non-residential buildings who want to convert those buildings to housing. There's an accelerator program to help them walk through that permitting process and what it means to bring those buildings up to code.
And will that be, will there be like affordable housing included in that? Like, is there a regulation on what kind of housing this can be? Because we definitely don't need more luxury housing.
Yeah, that's a great question. So as one for the zoning, there isn't an affordability requirement. However, I will highlight that with the state budget, they recently passed an affordable housing conversions tax incentive program. So essentially, we think that developers will be interested in taking advantage of that tax incentive program. And that requires a certain amount of percentage of the units to be set aside to be affordable, and those are going to be permanently affordable units. So I think that's really exciting that there is this tax incentive program now, so that any conversion projects that do happen, and that helps also make those conversion projects more financially feasible, also include permanently affordable housing. And the zoning can't dictate whether or not a project is rental or ownership, so this would allow for any types of those projects to happen, either like a rental project or like condos or co-ops.
Thank you.
There's a button.
All right, cool. Thanks. Thanks for the presentations you've given over the last several months. I had a question about something I heard in one of the webinars about City of Yes, which tried to sort of contrast this proposal with the Bloomberg era rezonings. Basically that, like, you know, prior to then you could build some of these, you know, 3/1 type things in the outer boroughs, like smaller apartment buildings with retail on the first floor. Now you can't. I think the Long Island City rezoning was also Bloomberg era. So I'm just sort of wondering, like, if you could give some color to what that was about, like how does this compare to what existed before then? How would it impact sort of the concentration of development that happened as a result of that rezoning? Just kind of put this in context with what happened 20 years ago.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So essentially, when we were talking about the Bloomberg era rezonings, a lot of neighborhoods in New York City saw down zonings. And what that refers to is like neighborhoods that now have like less capacity for housing to be added. And we also use a word in our webinars about exclusionary zoning and how housing opportunity is meant to tackle this historical exclusionary zoning. What that essentially just means, if we're making it harder to build housing, that also means we're making it harder for new people to move into certain neighborhoods. So really what this is about is for our suite of low density proposals that Katie walked through, it's meant to make sure that there is more opportunity for those lower density neighborhoods to add more housing so that they can welcome more folks there, because I'm sure there are people who would love to live in those neighborhoods as well. But right now, the zoning has artificially like restricted a lot of those areas to just build single family homes, when in reality, the underlying zoning already allows for like 2-family homes or these smaller apartment buildings, like you highlighted, ground floor commercial with 2 to 4 floors of housing above. Like these are uses and zoning, the zoning already allows for these types of construction, but other regulations that we've layered on the recent decades have really made it hard to build that type of housing in these areas. That also means that it's hard for new people to move into these neighborhoods as well.
Yeah. Here I am. First of all, last time you guys were here, I had asked you to please bring us something that shows how these proposals affect our community board. And I thank you very much for not doing it, because that makes it very easy for us to vote, not knowing how it's going to affect us. As an example, I live in a landmark area, a single family house. I assume I probably have 12 to 15 feet I could probably sell. Am I allowed to sell that? But I don't know because you didn't bother giving us that information. We're now being asked to vote somewhat blindly, not completely, thanks to an effort by the chair of the Land Use Committee who has provided us a guide. But it seems like we're being asked to vote for all 15 or nothing without being shown how it affects us particularly.
Come on, no discussion, please. We'll discuss this.
They did bring extensive maps of this local area to the land use meeting.
Right, and all 50 of us did not see them.
And I
Some who went to the meeting did.
And I apologize for that and.
Well, actually, it's not your fault. They're the ones who are responsible for educating us.
Because we asked them to shorten it tonight, so I apologize for that. It didn't allow them to give the response to the question that you asked. Okay, I apologize.
How does voting for all 15 of these items give us a step up from what the old system was, whereas if a developer wanted to come in and build bigger than allowed, he would have to possibly give backs, whether it was subway connections, infrastructure, or whatever, things that the community needed, whereas now he'll be allowed to do it as of right.
I'll address your first question as well. I think you do have some of the maps that zoom in specifically on this community board, and apologies if we didn't describe them in as much detail as you would like. I just want to briefly explain what you're mentioning about the landmark transfer development rights, and then I'll answer your other question about developers. So for the landmark transfer development rights, it sounds like you live in a historic district. Okay, so you live in a landmark building. Okay, so I mean, I'm going to comment broadly because I don't know obviously the specific site details.
Sunnyside Gardens, 900 homes.
Can you please speak into the microphone whenever you're talking?
Sorry. Sunnyside Gardens, I think it's 900 homes.
Yeah, let her ask the question.
Okay, I'll just explain broadly and then, happy to follow up with your specific address later over email. So essentially what we're doing for the only change that's affecting historic districts and landmark buildings and landmark sites is that right now, obviously, as I'm sure you're aware, maintaining a landmark building is very expensive because you have to follow all the regulations that Landmark Preservation Commission sets forward. And those are still remaining in place, but essentially we want to give owners of landmarks a bit more of like a flexibility with how they can transfer unused development rights to sites that are right now they're limited to like really only the lots that landmark building is on next to directly adjacent to. So we're expanding that radius that a landmark site could transfer their unused development rights. And that could be any lot on that block that landmark is on, or any block that's like directly across the street or on the intersection. So it's a wider transfer radius essentially. And I think we can follow up with maps showing where that is specifically if we haven't already. And the idea is that right now today, it's a special permit process, which is super onerous and hasn't really been used in the history of this special permit being enacted. So we're essentially saying that it should be an authorization, which is a bit less onerous, a little less red tape so that owners of landmarks can actually take advantage of, if they want to, transferring their unused development rights to that wider radius. And today, under our zoning, you can't transfer these unused development rights if that landmark building is in a historic district. So we're saying that if you're in a historic district, you can also do that. But the receiving site that's getting those unused development rights still have to follow all the LPC regulations and requirements. Those processes are not being affected at all by this zoning update. So hopefully that answers the landmark TDR proposal a bit more in detail, at least. As for like community voice and what that means for the city of Yes for housing opportunity, we've been doing this process right now of all the community boards, all 59, and getting your all's feedback. And this is helpful to inform our proposal. And you've been given a worksheet, I hope, of all the proposals, and that includes an opportunity to leave additional comments and feedback. And we do use those comments and feedback. They do get incorporated. I don't know if you've been following economic opportunity, the other City of Yes text amendment, but that has gone through changes pursuant of community feedback. For example, the corner store provision, which a lot of folks are really against, that's been cut from the economic opportunity text amendment. So like examples like that show that we do listen to the comments and they do help inform what ultimately like gets sent to council and then what council votes on, and they make further modifications as needed. And I will say for a lot of what Housing Opportunity does, it's meant to do incremental updates, like incremental change. Proposal, ultimately, we think over the next 15 years will enable roughly like 58,000. So it's like a small number. So it's not nearly as like a large density increase as a neighborhood rezoning that I know you all are also going through right now. But it's meant to be an incremental change to sort of create more opportunities on the margins for people, for new people, for people who live here in overcrowded situations and giving them those housing options.
Thank you.
We're required to vote for all 15 items or not?
Sorry, I can answer that, then let them, we have to stop the questions.
When we're asked to vote, are we being asked to vote for the entire package? Or are we allowed to split and say yes to 6, no to 9, or whatever?
It's the third text amendment. Yeah. Yeah. All right, thank you so much. Let's, yeah, you know, we have the feedback form. We know how to get in touch with folks. So let's, and again, your vote is your opinion. So thank you so much. And sorry, let's, I do have to, Robert.
Thanks. I just want to clarify. So we're going to be voting on something that we thought included the corner stores, but has been taken out.
That's economic opportunity. That's a different text edit. I would give that as an example of how we incorporate feedback. I'm so sorry.
I'm like, okay, are we going to be voting on things that have been taken out already that we don't know? Okay, thank you.
No. Nothing that you're talking about today has been touched by council yet.
All right, thank you so much. We still, you know, people are still entitled to public comment. We do have 4 folks. I'm going to ask you to keep it to just 1 minute now, please. Marge, Chris, Adam, and Leo. Really, we have 20 minutes to go to vote on City of Yes.
You're not voting tonight, right?
Well, yeah,
You're not voting tonight.
we are voting tonight.
That's not what it says on the agenda.
It does.
It says land use on June 18th.
No, that's when the next meeting is.
Oh, it says vote, land use.
Yep.
June 18th.
Go ahead.
Okay, I don't like them taking the parking requirement out. In my area, which is around 64th Street, I'm a couple blocks from Queens Boulevard. A few years ago, they did upzoning on Queens Boulevard and tried to keep south and into Maspeth as, you know, low rise. So we have huge apartment buildings going up. 2 of them you guys approved to go higher than zoning, and they put a public school in. That's fine, but the parking, no good. And I am concerned about the other infrastructure. You can't move thousands of people into a neighborhood when you don't have schools. We're overcrowded in District 24 as it is. The number 7 train is already overutilized. I don't know what's going to happen if they put a casino out at City Field. But there's development in Flushing, there's development in Long Island City. My husband gets on the subway at 5:30 and he can barely get on because that's the time when rush hour starts, 5:30 in the morning. So I'm not happy with a lot of the proposals. I didn't read the whole thing. I read some extracts, but I heard it was 1,300 pages. So I wonder if the whole community board has read the whole proposal.
Leo.
Hello, yes, you heard from me earlier today and also last month about City of Yes. I'll reiterate that I am in support of the proposal. I'm someone who at different phases of my life can see myself living in a number of these types of housing situations. Maybe the small shared housing as, you know, a young adult, an ADU, perhaps when I have an aging family member or when I become the aging family member. I like that this gives us the choice to build more types of housing in more places throughout the whole city. As everyone's aware, this neighborhood is responsible for a lot of the housing that's been built in the last 20 years. And something like City of Yes for Housing Opportunity will help share that burden across neighborhoods all over the city, which I think is beneficial for us as well.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dan. I live nearby, and I just wanted to say I'm a big supporter of City of Yes, and I urge the board to support the whole package. This is a package that's been thoughtfully designed to apply to areas across the city, and it really kind of works together as a gestalt to add more desperately needed housing. The city has a shortage. People live with roommates into their 30s and 40s. People crowd into bedrooms. People are living on the streets because we don't have enough housing. When there's a shortage, somebody loses. And we need to build more housing to get out of this shortage. And the City of Yes proposal will let the whole city build a little more. And I think that's what we need. So please support the entire package and, urge the city to do more and build more.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Adam. I live in Court Square. I recently moved here about a year and a half ago after I needed a bigger apartment when my partner moved in with me and I couldn't afford to stay in Manhattan Community District 2 where I lived. I was on Manhattan CB2 for 5 years. I had a great time living there. But it's so unaffordable now because there's no new housing production anywhere in the city. Yes, except for Long Island City, Queens. That's where I live. It's time for the entire city to really get behind the need to generate and produce more housing supply. It's the only way that, starting a family will be sustainable, buying an apartment will be sustainable, getting rid of a roommate will be sustainable. So many people, don't really understand just how tough it is if you're not exposed to the market forces right now. And the reality is, in order to have a functioning society, we really need housing for people who want housing, which is everybody. So please support the entire package. Thank you.
All right, attendance, Ryan?
All right, just a few minutes past 9:30. Almost. Amparo Abelbay. Nellie Afshar.
Present.
Okay. If you're online, you want to just say present online? You can do that. Okay. Sorry, present virtually is Debbie's request. Let's do that. Anatol Ashraf.
Present.
John Bahia. Anne-Marie Baranowski. Excused. Yep. Carisha Batan. Nick Berkowitz. Kat Bloomfield.
Present virtually.
Okay. Danielle Brecker. Carlos Castelcroc. Lisa Charles. Absent. Tanya Chavez. Excused. Yep. Osman Chowdhury. Okay, present. Steve Cooper.
Here.
Okay. Warren Davis.
Present virtually.
Okay, thanks. Lisa Deller. Maury Gallinoy. Samnath Kamir. Dr. Raz Janutzos. Alexandra Gonzalez. Camille Gray. Kenny Greenberg. Mohammed Hossein. Christine Hunter. Leland Kendall. Badrun Khan. Diana Kitchler. James Kim. Absent. Okay. Prameet Kumar. Chimang Lama. Sheila Lewandowski, excused. Benjamin Lucas. Absent. Patrick Martinez. Tom Matuzas. Eric Narberg. Andy Olivares. Zishan Ott.
Present virtually.
Okay. Riley Owens. Jolly Patel. Amaya Saab.
Present virtually.
Numberto Saldana, excused. Yep. Laura Shepard. I'm present. Caroline Spitzer. Lauren Springer. Akello Thomas. Mary Torres.
Present virtually.
Mai Tran. Sorry, you said present? Thanks. Letitia Vasquez. Michael Zurab. All right.
We have quorum.
Thank you. All right. 9:57.
All right, let's see how quickly we can get through this. And we have to vote on this and we have to respect our fellow community board members who are on Zoom, because if we go past 10:15, the Zoom call ends. They do not get to participate. So that is our time limit, unfortunately. So let's just approve the minutes and then I'm skipping my report. Does city planning need to report? No? All right, so let's just skip through it and go straight to land of yes. So approving the minutes. Christine seconded, all show of hands. Anyone abstain? Okay, one abstention.
Sorry, I actually meant to abstain because I wasn't here.
Two abstentions.
Make that 3, please. I'm finally back virtually, but back.
Welcome back, though. Great. Okay. Any no's? Great. Let's skip right ahead. Christine?
Oh, wait, my.
Thank you. And same with Katie. We'll just go straight to the vote, or straight to the presentation and then the vote.
So the land use committee met on, I think it was May 15th. Is that right? And we voted to approve the proposed City of Yes for Housing Opportunity zoning text amendments and had one general stipulation and then a couple of specific stipulations. The general stipulation was as follows: Queens CB2 overall and Long Island City in particular have experienced massive new housing construction over the last 20 years, far more than the district's fair share of citywide housing development. To date, the city has not implemented sufficient infrastructure improvements in storm sewers, public transit capacity, or additional park space to support this population growth. Queens CB2 recommends that amendments which would increase housing density in medium and high density districts not be implemented within the Queens CB2 unless or until storm sewers are rebuilt and transit capacity and park space are increased to acceptable citywide standards. Okay, specific stipulations under transit-oriented development. Transit-oriented development in low-density districts should prioritize housing for seniors and the disabled. For accessory dwelling units, we approved them in general, however, most types of them, but given the growing frequency of high-volume rain events and inadequate sewer infrastructure in many neighborhoods, CB2 does not support the addition of ADUs below ground level in buildings where current code requirements for basement apartments are not met. As a practical matter, if the city wishes to grant legal amnesty to such units that exist already and to assist owners in making those units safer, that should not be codified in the zoning resolution or permitted in new units. So under the universal, so moving to medium and high density, under the universal affordability preference, we just refer to our general stipulation that those not apply to CB2 until the city has improved the infrastructure. And then under the small shared housing, our stipulation would be to omit the proposed text which states that the limit on studios and one-bedroom apartments, AKA the dwelling unit factor, be removed. CB2 believes that a mixture of small and family-sized units is essential to all healthy and sustainable neighborhoods, including those within transit zones. And then under campus infill, CB2 does not support this proposed text amendment. Yes, Kenny.
All right. Oh, sorry. So there's a motion on the floor, now discussion. The clock is running, so when the clock goes. Oh, sorry. Kenny's motion was to approve the approve the land use recommendation with the stipulations. Yep, and it was seconded by Lisa. Discussion. Right, yeah. So to recap, the motion is to approve the land use
Right.
Okay. So it's to approve the text amendment with the stipulations recommended by the land use committee.
Correct.
Great. Discussion. Okay. I think this is it. Just you five, unless there's anyone online. But starting with Tom. Wait for the mic.
I don't anymore. Christine, thank you. I would be interested in your first stipulation if you called out also the fact that areas zoned as manufacturing only in Long Island City have double population. I think it's important that we acknowledge the increased populations in areas that the city of Yes has chosen not to speak of. Thank you.
I'll try to keep this brief. I think, you know, the land use committee reviewed this pretty extensively and kind of, I think at a high level, we all appreciate that our community district has, you know, received an outsized burden of the new housing construction. I think a lot of people have spoken to that. That was a policy choice made 20 years ago to some extent to downzone in some neighborhoods and upzone in others like LIC. And this is really just creating a more equitable distribution. And we're trying to sort of reflect that in our vote by saying we support the amendment, but we have a lot of concerns about the infrastructure and overdevelopment that we've experienced. And so I think that's sort of the right line to take. And I hope you all will join me in supporting the land use committee recommendation.
Thank you. So I am on the land use committee and I do agree with what we've put forth. However, I will be voting no because I do not trust that this will actually be monitored and be that way. We already live in Long Island City and how it is a result of rezonings that we had very little control over. I also am concerned that there is a rezoning going on in Long Island City right now that will impact this. So I don't trust that this will be that what we say will be taken into account. And while I appreciate that the share of the burden would be shared by the rest of the city, I don't know if I believe that. And I also I can't get past the infill on NYCHA campus's point. So thank you.
Questions. I had asked during the presentation whether we could vote yes on some and no on the others. And in fact, that's what your recommendation is.
Well, we're following the instructions we were given, which is that, you know, from the community board, you have to have an overall yay or nay resolution on, you know, on the whole package, but we included stipulations on specific items. Is that your question?
I guess so, but I mean, one of them was not a stipulation, it was a no. And that's not a stipulation. It's not no unless, it was absolutely not. So that's my first part. The second question I have, and this is a serious thing. If we vote yes, which the land use committee, I'm sure has looked at it much more than I have, we are saying yes, and that's all they're going to look at because there's 56 community boards who are voting. And if 56 community boards said yes, they don't care about stipulations. If 31 of them say yes, they don't care about stipulations. When we do the stipulations, as we've done over the years, many, many times, we do it because it only concerns us. This is a citywide thing. If we vote yes, the stipulations will not be looked at. It's just simply a yes. That's a comment. You don't need to answer.
Stephen, I do agree with you that it could be a strategic choice to vote no with the stipulations versus voting yes with the stipulations. Other boards do that. they often get looked at more than if you vote yes with the stipulation. So that is something that we could do. I think we submit the stipulations regardless of what our vote is, yes or no. That being said, I don't know your name, gentleman, in the red shirt, but I 100% agree with everything you just said. I feel like for way too long, this community board, it's shouldered an outsized burden in terms of density and growth. And it strained our resources. We've talked at length about the sewers and subways and schools and all sorts of things. But I think that's exactly why we should be supporting this text amendment, because what this is doing is it's calling on sharing the responsibility of housing needs more evenly throughout the city. So if you think there's too much development in LIC, let's ask everyone else to do their fair share. This text amendment allows everyone else to grow more in ways that are, modest and still within context for their neighborhoods. But it lessens the oversized impact that our community district and LIC specifically has had over the past 2 decades.
Yeah, I agree with Pramit on that, and I would also say that in terms of the overall goals and gist of the, set of amendments and the response that we've heard from them in terms of public comment, the majority of the comments have really spoken to this much larger issue of, where am I going to live? I'm tired of living with a roommate. There's too many people who can't afford any place to live. And so in terms of the overall spirit of the amendments, I don't feel comfortable proposing a no vote on the whole package. But others may disagree.
All right, question has been called. And just to comment on the process, we've heard pro, we've heard anti, and I feel like we have all the information and the middles. The land use committee spent 3.5 hours on this, and we have 5 minutes left. So
yes, and just one thing to Steve, I think we can rephrase the campus infill one to meet the requirements of a stipulation. I don't think that's a problem.
Yeah. Roll call vote. Debbie?
Carol Appleby? Yes. Nellie Ashbar? Yes. Anatol Asheroff?
Yes.
John Bahia? Carisha Baton? Nick Berkowitz? Kat Bloomfield?
Yes.
Danielle Brecker? Carlos Castillo-Croak? Lisa Charles is absent. Tanya Shaver is absent. Osmond Chowdhury? Stephen Cooper? Warren Davis?
Yes.
Oh. Lisa Della? Maury Gallinoy? Somnath Kamir? Dr. Rosamond Giannousis?
Yes.
Alexandra Gonzalez? Camille Gray? Kenny Greenberg? Mohammed Hossein?
Yes.
Christine Hunter?
Yes.
Leland Kindell? Patron Khan? Diana Ketchler? James Kin? Absent. Ramit Kumar? Chimalang Lama? Sheila's absent. Benjamin Lucas? Absent. Patrick Martinez? Tom Matusitz? Eric Nauberg? Andy Oliveris? Zishan Ott?
Yes.
Riley Owens? Charlie Patel? Omaya Saab? Yes. Roberto Saldana absent. Laura Shepherd? Yes. Ryan Smith? Caroline Spitzer? Lauren Springer? Akello Thomas? Mary Torres?
Yes.
Welcome back. May Tran? Leticia Vasquez? Michael Zorb. Okay, the motion carries.
All right.
We did it. If we have 2 minutes, Riley, let's just do, no, let's just do the email and let's just do the letter, if that's okay. I think because it's Pride Month, Maury, your quick announcement and then the camera shut off.
Just a real quick announcement.
It can come up or here too.
Very quick announcement that June 14th is the third annual Sunny Pride event that was co-founded by Caroline Spitzer, who did all the heavy lifting the first 2 years. Dirk McCall from Sunnyside Shines and myself. It's June 14th, Friday, 6 to 9 p.m. starts at 40th Street under the 7, marches up to 46th Street. There's going to be a queer market. There's going to be music, performances. Check it out. Go to sunnysideshines.org/sunnypride for more information.
Awesome. Yeah, happy summer, happy Pride, Eid Mubarak for the second one. Happy good luck with getting through school as a parent, school outage. Happy Father's Day. And the next, we're off for the summer. Work will continue via various committees. But the next meeting is on capital and expense homework, so there will be work for for all of us. But the next full board meeting is on September 12th because of holidays and things. So September 12th, the second Thursday in September. Thank you so much. Have a great summer. We did it. Good night. Wait. Seconded. Okay. Nick made a motion to adjourn.